Good evening, Temecula, and good evening, REDI commissioners. I am your chair, Tiffany Baker, and I will call this meeting to order. Erica, would you notice the meeting for us, please?
Yes, I'll go ahead and take roll call. Chair Baker,
Aye. Here, yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Here.
Commissioner Harris,
Here.
Vice Chair Huerta,
Here.
Commissioner Pastorian,
Here.
Commissioner Steed, here, and Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Okay, well, let's just dive right on in. We're going to start with presentations, and our first presentation is the community development. Welcome.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen here. Can everyone see that? Yes, thumbs up. Anyone?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Well, thank you again. I'm very happy to be here tonight to talk about the Community Development Department. I know you have all been receiving presentations from all the departments, and so I'll try to move through some of the content that I'm sure you've all seen, many times, the org chart and things like that, and get to a few things I think that might even be of particular interest to this commission. The first thing is, though, oftentimes people say, hey, what department are you in? I say community development. They say, well, what's that? Public works is easy to understand, finance is easy to understand, things like that. But what is community development? And in short, the community development department administers the city's general plan, as well as the city's zoning, building, and environmental regulations to ensure the orderly physical growth of the community. So we're primarily involved in the administration and planning for land use in the city. So physical construction, as well as the use of property, whether it's commercial, residential, office, things like that. And we do that primarily through a few documents and areas. So the first and most foundational is the general plan, which is the source of all goals, objectives, and policies of the city. It represents the vision of the community and is a legal basis for all of the land use that takes place within the city. All land use decisions have to comply with the general plan. Also, the Quality of Life Master Plan, which I know there's been a lot of talk about lately. I know many of you have thrown your hat in the ring for the Blue Ribbon Committee. This year, and this time around with the general plan, we're going to be using the Quality of Life Master Plan, which is really truly just a visioning document, but it's a very powerful visioning document. We're going to be using it as essentially the executive summary to the general plan, which will actually make it an even more powerful document. And it has been a very successful endeavor over the last 10 years. We also utilize the municipal code, which is the location of most of the ordinances that are approved by the city council. They end up in the municipal code. So it's really just the law of the land. That's where most of the ordinances end up. And then, of course, there's state and federal regulations that are coming down every single year, seemingly more and more and more over the years. So we are responsible for taking a look at that and making sure the city is compliant with all of those laws and regulations. And again, I know there's a lot here, and I know you've seen a lot of these. I just wanted to focus on just the divisions, not all the nuance underneath. We have 7 divisions in the department, and it's really kind of bifurcated into 2 kind of areas. And you can see it as represented in the blue and the green here. The blue side is kind of what I call the conveyor belt of land use. It's the whole concept to completion idea for development within the community. And it really starts with our long range planning unit. This is the unit that develops the general plan, develops all of the plans that are to be put in place concerning zoning, environmental management, community engagement, and essentially anything else. They are a research unit and a policy and procedures development unit. That's their primary goal. And of course, they take their lead directly from the city council in terms of what policies and procedures to go back and develop and then bring back for approval. The next stop would be our current planning group. And it's just what it sounds like, the current planning. This is the group of professional planners that act primarily as they're like consultants to developers or the average citizen who is either trying to build something or to get a permit for a business, whatever it may be. It could be for a 2,000 unit tract, or it could be for a water heater. But this is the group of folks that helps those individuals ensure that what they want to do is in compliance with the general plan and the municipal code, and that they can actually get it approved. So they walk them through that process. And then of course, once you have something approved, you want to go build it. And that's the building and safety department. So they're looking at actual construction plans and actually showing up on site to do the inspection. So this is the building inspection group. Pretty self-explanatory. I think most people have had some exposure to building inspectors. And then lastly, code enforcement. They're kind of the end of the line. They're there to, and I know we all know what code enforcement is, but they're there to just make sure that everything that was approved and built continues to be used in the manner for which it was approved on the land use side. And of course, they deal with a lot of other things like neighborhood disputes and graffiti and really everything under the sun. So that's kind of the community development planning, concept to completion, putting policies and procedures in place and then actually implementing it into the built environment that we actually all live in. Now, with that aside, I want to focus on a couple of other divisions. We have an administration division, but I know you've heard over and over what the administration portion of each division or each department does. So stay away from that. But we have a housing division and a community development block grant division. And I want to talk a little bit more about both of those. So in community development, we have a lot of responsibility in terms of the zoning opportunity for housing. Where is it going to go? Where shouldn't it go? How much needs to be built? Those kinds of things, the kind of planning side. And that's really primarily dealing with the private market. So private developers, private financing, that side of the ledger. What I want to talk about is affordable housing, which is, and it's in quotations here. What I mean by affordable housing is that it's housing that has an actual public financial investment in it. So the city is putting money into a project, and in return, the city is getting either restricted sales prices for sale product, or we're getting restricted rents over a period of time. And of course, that's all hopefully for the benefit of low income households. And there's really 4 categories: moderate, low, very low, and extremely low. And it's all based on area median income. So that's what I mean by affordable housing. And some of you have may seen my presentation to the council a few weeks back. This is a little redundant, but important nonetheless. So there are really 3 areas that we've been engaged in over about 25 years now as a city. I haven't been here for 25 years, but the city's been really engaged in the construction of affordable housing for about that time period. And in addition to actual physical construction, while funding was available, we did have a first-time homebuyer program, which was very successful, and an extremely successful residential improvement program, which was a program to help low-income folks, reinvest in their homes. And I wanted to show you a few examples of the different types of products that the city has invested in that are restricted for low-income families and households. This is the cottages of Old Town. I mean, one of the things that we really strive for over the years is it's unacceptable for us to be involved in a project, a development of a project that doesn't look like everything else in the city that you could drive by and say, that's affordable housing. No, we want the complete opposite. We want people to drive by and say, I want to live there. And I would say we've been actually really successful in that respect. We have people calling us all the time asking, about the stuff in Old Town and why can't they rent there? And we have to let them down that they're not low income folks and they're not eligible. And that to me is a sign of success. This is another cottage. There were 17 units. They were all slightly different. We also have done work with Habitat over in the Pujol neighborhood. This is another Habitat project that we've worked on with them. This was 5 units. And then some of you may be familiar with these buildings in Old Town. They're on 5th Street. They're mixed use buildings. They have commercial in the bottom floor, and then on the residents above are all affordable. This building here, they're right next to each other. Many of you probably have gone to the Cuban restaurant, and that's the entryway to the Cuban restaurant right down there. But lo and behold, the residents above are all low income. And that was something we tried to do to not only get affordable housing units, but to spur redevelopment and economic development down in Old Town and to get the most out of public funds. This is another good project over on Pujol Streets, the Portola Terrace development. And I wanted to show you this one because this one's a little bit different. I know this is a bad picture, but what this was a foreclosed on half-built project called Summer House over off Margarita, down by Temecula Parkway. And this was during the Great Recession, and it just was foreclosed on, half built. So the city stepped in along with a affordable housing developer, purchased the property, invested $8 million, and finished off the project, cleaned it up, and now it's a very successful affordable housing development. The 110 units. There are 20 units set aside for seniors, and it's a beautiful project. It has large units, three bedroom. Some of them are 2,000 square feet. So good for a good sized family. It's something we're proud of. And this is a project, Riverbank Senior Apartments. So this is just for seniors, 65 units. It's a good looking project. And again, like I said, we had engaged in a first-time homebuyer program when we had the funding, and we can talk about the defunct redevelopment agency, but regardless, there was funding at one time, and we engaged in first-time home buyer grants, so not loans, grants, and we were able to assist 20 first-time home buyers and spent about $500,000. And finally, the residential improvement program. Again, our funding dried up for this, the large-scale funding, but when we did have the funding, we were able to rehabilitate 488 homes in the city. And these were for low-income folks only. So this was to help them not only rehab the aesthetic of their home, but if they had, plumbing problems or electrical problems or broken water heaters or whatever it may be, this funding was there to assist them with that. Luckily, we are using some of our Cdbg dollars, albeit it's a lot less, through Habitat for Humanity, who's now running a residential improvement program in the city. And that's what we've done. The future, we have some projects on the books. Las Haciendas, 77 units up in what is we refer to as Uptown Temecula, up in the Jefferson area. And we've already allocated through a funding agreement $10 million for this project. We're hoping this gets started soon. As well, the Vine Creek project, 60 units, $2.7 million investment by the city. There's county money in this, there's state money into this project. And we're hoping, again, with this project that they can get construction going as soon as possible, because our funding is already set aside for it. And then finally, I showed you this house before. This is a Habitat house, but we're going to be doing another project with Habitat right next door on some city-owned property, 6 units. And this is a for sale product. So this is another opportunity to give low-income households the option to actually own a home and not just rent, if that's what if they want to do. And we've heard from community that they would heard from the community that they'd like to see more product like that. And so we're doing our best to make that happen. So just in summary, on our affordable housing side, the city has completed 661 units. We have 143 in the pipeline, and we've invested 43.3 million, and we have 13.7, so almost $60 million that has been invested in restricted affordable housing in the city of Temecula. And I don't think a lot of people really know about that level of funding that has been invested in the city for this particular purpose. So it's a good story. So next, I want to talk to you quickly about Community Development Block Grant, Cdbg, we say for short. What is Cdbg? It's an annual federal grant program for the development of viable communities. That's right out of their regulations. And essentially, it's money from the federal government for the city to invest in affordable housing, public infrastructure and facilities, and public services and economic development. And we can invest in those three things so long as we meet a national objective. And of course, that it has to benefit low and moderate income folks and households. It has to work to prevent or eliminate slums and blight. It has to meet an urgent community need. And for the most part, it needs to be targeted to underserved census tracts. And many of you may be familiar with census tracts, but the country is a patchwork of census tracts. They're developed through the census. And what it means to be underserved in a census tract means, there's a high unemployment in that census tract. There's a high propensity for there to be low income folks. There's high crime rates. There's kind of a whole formula. And so the Cdbg dollars need to be focused into those areas to assist with some of those issues. So like I said, public infrastructure, what we're funding this year, and we funded a number of things, but just this year is the rehabilitation of the Mary Phillips Senior Center. And it couldn't come at a better time. This year has been, the Mary Phillips Senior Center has been a huge lifeline for the seniors in the community to come and get meals. And that's been going on throughout. So it's a well-used, high demand facility, and it is time for it to get a facelift. Also, ADA Improvement Citywide. This is one of our big investments pushes. There's a lot to do, and there's not enough money to do it, but we're knocking it out as much as we can incrementally over time. Obviously, this is to provide equal access to our fellow residents with disabilities. And then a simple one, just sidewalks, filling in missing gaps around the city. Of course, they're in the underserved census tracts for the most part, but also about equal access and the ability to have options in transit. And that's what we've been doing with the Cdbg dollars and infrastructure. In terms of public services, these always are, we're really proud of the work that we've done with so many of our nonprofits in town. One of them being Community Mission of Hope. We provide Cdbg dollars for their food bank. They do a lot of things, but we specifically fund their food bank. And I know many of you are probably familiar with the work of Community Mission of Hope, and they've been a great partner. We fund the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center, a very important resource in the community to provide anti-violence education, obviously crisis intervention, and to hopefully prevent homelessness. Again, a very critical kind of under the radar service that is very much needed. We also provide funding for Safe Alternatives for Everyone, SAFE, which is providing services for children, youth, and families who have experienced or at risk of abuse and domestic violence. And SAFE has been in the community for a long time. They've been a partner with the city for many, many years, and they do exceptional and important work. This is one of my favorites, Voices for Children. We fund a portion of their court-appointed special advocate program, which is referred to as CASA. This is a unique program where volunteers are trained by Voices for Children to be a special advocate for a foster youth as they move through the court system, as they move from foster home to foster home, whatever it may be. It gives them an anchor, something that is constant and consistent through their experience, which is always a very tough experience. And they're very proud of the program. I think it does really great work, and it's, like I said, it's one of my favorites, my personal favorites. Boys and Girls Club, we all know what the Boys and Girls Club is, but the Cdbg program helps them out with the before and after school care program and keeping kids engaged in positive activities before and after school. And this is also a cool one, the Assistance League Operation School Bell, which is a program that we help fund that provides school children, low-income family school children, the ability to get a couple $100s, and they usually do it at Kohl's, and they get to go into Kohl's and use that money to buy whatever they want for school clothes and shoes for the upcoming school year. And they serve a lot of kids, hundreds of kids through this program. And finally, the Fair Housing Council of Riverside. This is something that we're required to participate in, but we also want to participate in with our Cdbg dollars. And this organization provides tenant support, and they also act as representation for tenants in landlord-tenant disputes and mediation. And they're also a very, very important resource for the community. And lastly, I just want to touch again on the Quality Life Master Plan. We're going to be coming back to this commission next month with a full presentation on the general plan as well as the Quality Life Master Plan. There are currently 6 core values in the Quality Life Master Plan, and the newest one, which this commission is going to be intimately involved in and driving, is the development of the 7th core value around the issues of equity. So I know that that's going to give this group a lot of good work to do, and we're looking forward to that. And I know that I think 5 of the 7, if I'm remembering right, have thrown your hat in the ring. And just so you know what's coming up with that process, we'll be meeting with the subcommittee next week. They're going to be developing their own recommendation on the final, the final makeup of that committee, and then that will go to the city council for their full consideration on April 27th. So then we'll have a blue ribbon committee established, and we'll come to you with a kind of a kickoff presentation, and then Randy will be guiding you through as you work to develop the equity core value. So with that, that's community development. There's a lot there. I know. I hope I wasn't too long-winded, but I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Well, thank you so much, Luke. No, you were not long-winded at all. Commissioners, before you ask questions, may we do the flag salute? That is very important, and we missed that. Commissioner Faulkner, would you please lead us in this flag salute, please? And you have to unmute yourself, Commissioner Faulkner.
Yes, I'm doing the camera. Can everybody stand? You can mute your, turn off your video, because I don't want, while we're standing. And, all right, I'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Luke? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question.
Go for it.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for that presentation. You gave us a lot of information, and by this being Fair Housing Month, this is the best time for you to do that presentation. So I have 2 questions. My first question is, you said we're doing first-time home buyers program and incentives like that. Is there more monies that are going to be budgeted to do more grants for them?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I kind of alluded to it. A lot of the funding that was available for those programs was available through a funding source called redevelopment, which was a separate legal entity from the city, and it received property tax revenue directly to the agency. And then we were able to use that money for programs like the first time home buyer program, very successful program. Unfortunately, in 2012, the then governor decided to disband all redevelopments throughout the state for various reasons. And with it went our dedicated annual funding source, not only for the first time homebuyer program, but for affordable housing in general. So I guess the short answer is this year, we probably aren't going to be able to request any general fund dollars for a first time homebuyer program, but we are always on the lookout for grant opportunities from the state. And as housing is a very hot topic these days, there are so many grant opportunities that we could barely keep up, to be honest with you. So we're constantly looking, and first time homebuyer, especially with the way prices are now these days, it's at the top of our radar. If we see something that's providing funding for that, we're going to go for it. What we're seeing a lot right now, though, is really a focus on funding for the homeless issues. So I mean, it's really weighted at the state level down to funding for homeless issues. But I promise you, if we see something for first time homebuyers, we're going to be all over it.
That's great. And I love to hear that. And my second question is, because me being a realtor, the first question that I'm always asked, where is the affordable housing in the city of Temecula? And they're like, I have the husband, the wife, the dog, and one child, and I cannot afford $500,000 to $600,000 as my first home. So is there any plans in the work to build some affordable housing? And what I mean by that is $350,000 to $475,000, something like that, realistic for our first time home buyer.
Actually, yes. We have multiple projects in process with the planning department right now. They aren't going to be the track home product. They're going to be townhome product and some very, very small single family product. One of the projects is called Heirloom. It's already approved, and it's going to be on the vacant property, a piece of the vacant property that's over by the Mercedes and Audi dealership next to Harvard.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we're processing 2 other projects there. They're not approved yet, but with changes, they will be approved. 2 similar type projects that will essentially cover the rest of the vacant property on that site. There's a project on Rancho Cal, I don't know, right across from the Portofino apartments, which is also going to be in that price range. And there's a project Madera Vista, Rancho Soleo, which is in the south side of town, which is offering some of their product is offered in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. That being said, one last thing, we do have a large project on the west side of Old Town that is getting ready to kick off after many, many years of work, which is called the Altair Project. And that's up to 1,750 homes, which will be primarily townhome style homes, but they're targeting, at least as of today, anywhere between $300,000 and $550,000 for their product line. So there is hope there that there's going to be some relatively affordable, non-restricted product in the near future.
That's so good to hear. That's music to my ears, and I'm sure Jackie can attest to that too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Commissioner Steve?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Luke. I appreciate all the work that you do, and you definitely have your fingers in so many things going on in the city. I'm sure that it keeps you very, very busy. With the history of the United States being really grounded in prejudice and zoning issues and people of color not having the advantages of everybody else, Obviously, times have changed over the years, but are there procedures within your department, training within your department, everything that covers everything that was done in the past that was wrong? Are you guys updated and your staff is updated and made sure that we are continuing to move forward?
Yeah, well, where I would start with that is that all the planners in the department are all professional planners. They all have at least an undergraduate degree. Many of them have master's degrees. Many of them have professional designations, and those all carry with them, requirements to get those degrees, to be educated in the history and discrimination that took place in the past. There's standard reading, the color of law, books, different authors, and there's a whole set of requirements that you have to go through to even get a degree as a planner. So that's where I'd first start by explaining or answering that question. But also, we have training every single year. We go to an annual conference non-COVID years. We go and we have standard training. We're updated on the latest best practices in the field, the issues that are most pertinent, the things that things that would come before this commission are at the top of mind in the planning field right now, and they have been for a number of years. So I would say that we're well versed in the issues, and we're lucky though here in Temecula. I will say, we're only 30 years old, so we're kind of not burdened with actual history of the city itself being engaged 70 years ago in redlining and things like that. We just weren't involved in that because we didn't exist. So luckily, we're kind of more in the modern era, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. We have a great city, and we're definitely, hugely in the right direction. Having said that, Habitat Way and all of our different housing that is located in pockets, is there any way that, so the private developers that come in and put these great, beautiful tract homes, is there any way the city can work with them to have some of those homes designated for lower incomes? Is there any potential to that at all?
Yeah, that's actually something we're working, the projects that are already approved and that are under construction, it's kind of the ship is already sailed on that. But I mentioned a lot of the projects that we have coming up and that are in process now. And many of them are attempting to get general plan amendments or zoning amendments. And with that, that's an entirely discretionary approval of the city council. I mean, they don't have to do it. They don't have to approve that. So when we're in that situation, it provides a lot of leverage to the city. And what we're going to be pursuing is negotiations for just that. If you want this general plan amendment, there's a public need here. We need to talk about inclusion of affordable housing in these new projects. So yes, that's definitely a conversation that we'll be having on any project that requires a discretionary approval in the future.
That's great news. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Huerta.
Yes, thank you. And thank you again, Luke, for that awesome presentation. I agree with my fellow commissioners. The affordable housing projects, that's amazing. It's good to hear that these projects are coming online. I just had a question. I know some of them are not approved yet, and I apologize. I should dig further into the website, but are these projects on your website where we could track kind of where they're at and see how the development is going and maybe get a timeline of when these will be approved and constructed?
Are you referring to the affordable housing developments,
yes,
or all of the developments?
The affordable, well, I think all of I think you do have some of the developments on your website, but more specifically to the affordable housing.
Yeah, we have a website that has all of the affordable housing developments on there with the description, contact information, and all that. We don't have any of the projects that aren't under construction on that website, and maybe that's a good idea. We could put up the pictures that I showed you, And we usually do that as we get closer because a lot of people, there's waiting lists for these projects. I mean, that's just the way it is, sometimes 2 and 3 years long. So as we get closer, we usually coordinate with the developer, and then we get a whole campaign going to get folks onto the list as fast as possible. But we might as well just put them up there now. And so people know, even though it's a couple years out. And
Right.
you know, it adds to our inventory and people can see what we're up to. It's a great idea.
Yes, and I think more, for the timeline, because I know some folks that have been on the waiting list for some of the current projects, and they've been waiting for 3-4 years. So
Yeah.
I know, it'd be good for them to be able to see right when these are available for application.
Absolutely.
And then just my last question was, I know you also mentioned the residential improvement program, which there's no longer funding for either. Do you see any of that coming back in the future at all?
Probably not at the level of funding we had when we had redevelopment. We have we provide $50,000 a year in Cdbg funds to Habitat for Humanity, who's essentially running the exact same program. It's just we had $500,000 a year back in the day. We don't have that much money anymore, but we still have the program. It's just toned down quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harris, I saw you.
Thank you. I know you see me. But I wanted to first start off by saying thank you, Luke. I really appreciated your presentation. I thought it was extremely informative. I also wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Cip, because I believe that she touched upon something that was extremely important, which is the acknowledgement that zoning and planning historically is grounded very deeply in racial and racist institutions. So I understand if it's the same kind of question, but really, how does the community development, zoning and planning ensure equity more in the forms of like official language? Is there any official language in the general plan that addresses racial equity and ensuring that although we're a young city, we don't unintentionally create zoning patterns that are discriminatory?
Yes, I would say that the answer to that is no. There is no language in the general plan as it currently sits that is specifically targeted at the issues that you're talking about. That's not to say that it's actively working against them. It's just not affirmatively in the document. Now that's going to change. The document was done in 2005, so we're well overdue for that. Since then, we've gone through a process with HUD to develop a document to affirmatively further fair housing. We're one of a handful of jurisdictions in the entire country that got through that process successfully. So we have that as a regulatory document that we use here at the city that we're required to abide by. And that document, not the general plan, but that document has everything that you're talking about. That's the federal government and the city working together to make sure that equity in housing is required and affirmatively required, not just tacitly required. So that leads me to the Quality of Life Master Plan, which is going to have a 7th core value of equity, which is exactly what you're talking about. And that's and like I said, the Quality of Life Master Plan is going to serve as the vision and executive summary for the general plan, which gives it even more weight than it has now, because right now it's just a visioning document. When it's tied into the general plan, it's the legal foundation of the city. All projects, all permits, everything that takes place, all actions of the commissions of the city council has to comply with the general plan. So no, we're not there yet, but we've got the stuff going in process towards all of that. And you guys are going to be a big part of that.
I'm so sorry. While you're speaking, my niece came into my room. I'm sorry if you saw me speaking. As much as I try to
Did
keep
you,
her out of here, we're very close.
did you catch,
Uh,
did you catch the end of what I was saying there?
Yeah, I did catch the end of what you were saying. And I'm sorry, y'all, I have a few more questions because I'm really interested in what y'all do. So from my understanding, a lot of the affordable housing development seems to be centered around commercial centers in Temecula. So I'm thinking about Old Town, the project on Margarita. Is there any plan to kind of create more residential? I know that you spoke about a couple of tracks, but ensuring that there's a little bit more diversity when it comes to affordable housing plans. And you could explain a little bit of your limitations in regards to zoning and affordable housing.
On the zoning side, affordable housing is allowed wherever residential is allowed. And in some cases, it's allowed where private market residential is not allowed, say in the professional office zone. So affordable housing is allowed there, and market rate isn't. So it actually is allowed in more places than most residential. So that's on the zoning side. So we don't have a lot of restrictions there in terms of where it can go in the city. It can go more places than private market house can go. In terms of the location of affordable housing, we've got different locations. We've got over off Margarita. We've got the one I showed you, the summer house in Madera Vista, and then we have Rancho California, which is right over by Margarita Park, which is surrounded by residential. And then you have quite a few over in the Pujol neighborhood, which was just twofold. We had the ability to invest in some rehabilitation, which is always a better bang for the buck, instead of ground up construction. So we did some of that and we continue to do that. But we also did ground up construction over there because there was vacant land, and it's always cheaper to find vacant land. And when we look at from a planning perspective, Old Town and adjacent residential, we see that as a good thing. That's a walkable community. You can walk to the market. There's more higher density of bus stops in the Old Town area. This is kind of like the smart growth planning. While it's not perfect, it's what we got in Temecula, in terms of urban style growth pattern. That's what we're trying to recreate also in the Uptown area, which is adjacent to Old Town, which is kind of a concentration of housing and jobs and entertainment and everything you would want to do without having to get in your car, so to speak. So that's why we focused a lot on Old Town. And I think to wrap that answer up is what I was explaining to Commissioner Steed, is that in the future, we're going to be requesting that developers that come in with large scale residential development include as a portion of much of their development affordable housing. And that will, by its very nature, spread it out all over the place.
That brings my next question, and I promise that it will be my last. You had touched upon how you work with transportation, public transit, correct? Mm-hmm. That falls under the department. So is there any plans? Maybe you could explain to me, I know that there's a couple bus lines that are going around now, how successful that has been. Also, the department's understanding of transportation being highly important when being able to have individuals access opportunity. And as affordable housing spreads, the need probably for more public transit. Can you talk to me a little bit, or explain a little bit what has been developing in regards to public transit as our city expands?
The city itself is not necessarily the lead agency or even the authoritative agency for public transit. That's the Riverside Transit Agency, RTA, and we work very close with them. But they really do have the the funding and the purview to dictate where transit lines or bus stops. The entire and that's for all of Riverside County. But we work very closely with them. And one of the successes we've had recently was the development of a transit center at the mall. which is the convergence of a lot of lines in one location. That is really important because essentially all of the funding for affordable housing, I won't say all, but most of it, for funding and future transportation dollars in this space, in the public transportation space, centers around how close the development can be to a transit center, a high quality transit center. And there's a specific definition for that, which is it has headways of, every 15 minutes for at least one line, which we don't have anywhere else in the city, which means we weren't eligible for just a whole series of grants that are available if you have a transit center. Well, we have a transit center now. So the general plan update that we're in now, we're going to be going through is going to be taking a hard look with the owners of the mall about how are we going to be able to incorporate housing into the mall development itself. I mean, you look at the mall and you look at all the parking that's out there in the Bellagio Center that's right next door. I mean, I'm getting a little ahead of myself by bringing that up, and I see Randy smiling. I don't want to get too far ahead of the council's skis, but that's what I don't think it's a problem for me to say that we're going to be having those discussions. And because the transit center is there, we were lucky enough to get a grant. RTA was lucky enough to get a grant. That's going to have a ripple effect over the next 10, 15 years in what we're going to be able to do realistically between at the convergence of housing and transportation, at least in that portion of the city.
Thank you so much. I could have questions for days, but that will do for now. And I know that you'll be coming back. So thank you again.
No problem. Thank you.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Well, you guys stole all my thunder. All those great questions you've already asked have pretty much hit the mark. So I just want to, Luke, just want to say really glad that you guys are putting the funding in the ADA. You took a look at the city and started to work on those things, ensure that they feel included within our space as well. So glad that you guys have funded a couple of projects as you went around the city to try to improve upon that experience as well. One of the things I want to talk about in regards to the affordable housing is how do you manage, I mean, we talk about diversity. How do you oversee, manage, evaluate, track that the affordable housing is being afforded and the opportunity for a diverse group of people to be able to move into those units? I know you say you have a wait list. So is that wait list so long and so many people already on it that all those houses, all those new units coming up are already spoken for and they have enough to actually house those people? And the other thing would be from a marketing standpoint, how's that marketing going external to Temecula? Is that, are we focused more internally, or are we making sure that's shared external to our city as well, to be able to expand on our inclusion of other people coming into the city of Temecula? So,
yeah. The developments themselves are only restricted by your income level. So there's no other criteria that is applied, and it's not applied by the city. We don't own these developments. We're a financial investor in the development.
mm-hmm.
And what we get, so to speak, what we purchased is reduced rents or reduced sales price.
Right.
But they're owned, the for rent developments are owned by a professional affordable housing developer or property manager.
Right.
And they actually do the screening of potential tenants, and they do it based on income
Right.
only. So that's the only criteria that they're essentially allowed
to do. Yeah.
Right. And like the part of your question was, are there enough units? Absolutely not. There's just a huge deficit. It's an unbelievable deficit in the number of affordable housing units that are needed, and that's just a sad fact.
Yeah.
And the wait lists are first come, first serve.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no other fair way to do it, honestly. And people wait for a long time, but it's a tough thing. In terms of the marketing, we don't actually do, because we don't own the project. And there's not a lot of marketing that we do. I don't think there's a lot of marketing that's done by the affordable housing developers because they're sought out. I mean, people are finding these places. They don't, in my opinion, I don't even think they need to, they don't take the time to market in the ways that we would think about marketing because they've just got too many people. I mean, they would just be added to their wait list, you know, just to be completely honest with you. And that's their experience. That's not the city's experience.
Right.
But I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, they've got too many people, probably not a lot of need for marketing.
Okay, and just one last comment is, as I look at the units you guys are building and how you're making them matching with the city, you guys have done a phenomenal job. No one would be able to come in and say, this looks like, because there's a stigma in some people that affordable housing needs to look like this, or it looks like this, and you're able to find it when you come into a city, right? Oh, those are affordable housings. You guys have done an amazing job to make sure that the housing that you're building is quality housing that anyone would want to live in, whether if you had the income and you would buy it. Some of these places, if people had the income, they would still want to rent these places. So what you've done is an amazing job, and they blend into the city very well. So you guys as planners doing amazing. I'm glad to see we have so many units coming on board, but saddened by the fact that, guess what, we already have a full waiting list and they're going to be spoken for, which means that some people are going to be left to try to find something somewhere else. But I applaud you guys on your efforts and just want to say thank you for the presentation. Very great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Pastorian.
Thank you very much. Again, great job on your presentation. I have kind of more comments and maybe a singular question here. First off, you know, again, I applaud what you're doing. You're listening to the public, and you're certainly delivering on some of those opportunities that they're seeking and what they want, and that's it's really important and critical in what we're doing. Certainly providing opportunities for home ownership as well, and just going beyond a simple, you know, the rental piece of it. I echo completely what Commissioner Faulkner said in terms of there is kind of a notion of what that should look like or what it should be in our minds, and it's none of those things. And I think Temecula has done a great job in you know, kind of creating what that should look like now. It's just the same as anything else, right? So and I love that they've done that. I also want to mention, I know Commissioner Harris brought it up in terms of you know, kind of the pockets of where some of these homes are being located or townhomes are being located, certainly by industry and such. But I also want to point out, and you've, I think, kind of alluded to this as well, that that the looking at the way that, you know, families have changed, generations have changed, and creating that younger places that you can walk to, right, or access to transit, or being near a lively entertainment place. You know, it's kind of got a different feel than what perhaps a traditional older previous generation might have desired to. And I think you're certainly entering into that space where some of these homes are, and I like that, because you're doing something that is also acknowledging that diverse piece in age, like the different age groups that we have. So that's amazing. The one thing that I wanted to ask about is that I saw that Vine Creek, I believe it was, had special needs in there, and it kind of had some housing around that. Are you working, or the developer working with any particular agencies that they are partnering with, or organizations, to bring that our special needs community into that, to let them know that these homes are available or this housing is available? And if so, what does that look like? The follow-up to that question, I'll just ask you now, is while that one's in development, do we have any current homes that incorporate special needs?
Okay, so yes, the developer is working with a group called Our Nicholas Foundation, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a local organization that we've been working with them since the very outset of the negotiations. And so they will be, they're not a technical partner, but they are a partner to help with, the developer is not an expert in that field, of course. So they're going to assist them with the placement of families, so long as there are enough families to place, which I think there probably will not be a shortage of. And then the second question was, again, I'm sorry.
is there any current existing housing that incorporates special needs as well?
We don't have any that is restricted like that development will be. So that I think it's 14 units will be set aside for individuals or families with individuals that have special needs. But what we do have now on the south side of town is a development that's going up right now, Rancho Soleo, which is not funded by the city, doesn't have city money into it. But what we did negotiate with them was, those are all for sale, and they have a product package that we required of them to put together that is a series of special alterations to the home that would be for special needs, be for whatever needs are needed. And if a person or family wants to come in, they have this options pack because they're brand new. So that they can go in and say, I want this unit on this part of this lot, and I want it to have these, just like you choose countertops, right? Or choose paint colors or whatever. So that is a part of that project. Now, it's only for the folks that come in first, right? Because those packages they won't be available to resales, but it is something that we negotiated to try and provide for some special accommodation with new housing here in town. So
I love that. Thank you so much. And I agree, in terms of what Commissioner Faulkner also mentioned, with marketing and stuff, it's so, important to start drawing, people's eyes to some of these things and perhaps celebrating these partnerships that Temecula has publicly so that people become more aware of the opportunities that exist out there. Obviously there's a waiting list, but the fact that, that they are there, and some people may not necessarily realize that even by, going on the website and such, because those are those details, that you don't know until you know. And so, but celebrating that partnership and here's why, right, would be amazing. So, but great job. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Well, Luke, you was ready. That's what I appreciate about your presentation. First of all, I really appreciate someone being prepared and understanding. And what I want to say about you in your presentation is that I personally appreciate that you care, and that you were prepared to come to this commission tonight. And I'm also proud to be a Temeculanan again, because it's just showing housing is a very complex problem,
Mhm.
And I'm really happy to hear that we are involved with resolving that problem to the best of our abilities. So I think these questions were great. And I would like to jump off from the nonprofit sector. And I'm more concerned about the people once they get into the houses. How are they living together? How are their family dynamics? Do they have the coping skills to deal with stress, etc.? I say that to say, as it relates to nonprofits and their ability to provide services and those gap services to our communities, how do you engage nonprofits in a diverse way or in an equitable way to participate and partner with the city as it relates to providing some of those social and emotional needs, or being in diverse programming as community partners for nonprofits? And then my follow-up question would be to that, is there any plan in the city to develop nonprofit relationships? I think nonprofits are one of the most overlooked sector because you don't realize how much we carry as in a nonprofit to a city's well-being, because we really go directly to the people. So can you speak to me your plans about that and how we can, because I didn't know you had a lot of these programs, and I was like, well, how do you become a nonprofit that's partnering with the city? So I'll turn it over to you, Luke.
Yeah, so on our nonprofit engagement, particularly through our Cdbg program, we've been doing this for long enough at this point to where, the nonprofit community in Temecula is not that big. There are a lot of players, but there's not so many that we can't really know most of them or all of them. And so that helps, the network and the history with folks helps. But we also, we engage in public noticing. We engage in public noticing well beyond the regulatory requirement. I mean, we're in every media platform that we can get our hands on, and all the new ones, social, not new, but social media and all the traditional ones like the paper and Channel 3 and anywhere we can really get out to folks. And we do that also in English and in Spanish. So that's helping to be inclusive. And then once a nonprofit shows interest and provides that interest to us, we actually hold 2 every year before the applications are due, technical assistance workshops, because a federal grant application is not an easy thing to fill out, right? So we bring in our consultant, and we have a daytime workshop and we have a nighttime workshop. And we have translators there that are able to, do it in Spanish if that's what is needed. And we assist them. We'll walk a nonprofit through step by step how they have to fill out this application. And it may seem simple, but it's not. It's a big deal. They're very long, and if you don't fill it out just right, we're forced to toss it out. So that has actually been probably one of the biggest helps in getting because there's nonprofits out there that are super professional, and they have salaried staff and they know how to do these things, but they don't provide all the services, and so we're really proud that we are able to do that and help folks out, give them, let's kind of level the playing field on the bureaucratic side, so the services they provide can speak for themselves, and we can cut through the nonsense and just get to that. Right. So that would be the biggest thing I would say that is kind of providing that equal access to the opportunity that has been really a big deal. And a lot of nonprofits have made their way into getting funding through Cdbg because of those workshops. And then on the city developing, I guess you mean, is the city going to develop its own nonprofit? I don't know if we have any.
No, you answered the question, like develop opportunities for nonprofits to grow, to thrive, to engage, to because I was just talking to someone else about this, and it's not just a matter of getting funding. For me, my thought is it's also teaching a nonprofit how to maintain their funding. So it's one thing to check the boxes and go into meet the requirements, but getting up under your nonprofits and saying, let me make sure you succeed because we see you as valuable in this community.
Well, I can answer that question too. So,
so that's the one I'm talking about, that part.
Yeah. So, I just explained how we can create more opportunity on the front end, but once we're a partner, we partner with a consulting firm called MDG, and they're professional Cdbg HUD consultant, and they work directly with all the nonprofits. And just like we walk through the application, we walk hand in hand with all of our public service providers. I mean, if they need it forever, we'll do it forever, because we need them to comply and they need the help. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And they're working with our MDG consultant is working with the nonprofits all the time. There's so much that goes into a federal grant, as you know, that we don't want to leave them out there on their own, because they're gonna trip up on a mine somewhere along the line, and it's gonna be everybody's problem. So it's a working relationship all the time. It's not just here's $10,000, come back in a year with all your documentation pristine, no no errors or anything, and then we'll go from there. And that's not how it works. We're in a working daily, weekly relationship with our nonprofits.
Well, the last thing that I'll say about that is it's a repetitive statement I'm sure you hear a lot. Wow, you guys do a lot, but somehow the marketing and the advertisement of what I'm just blown away every time I hear these presentations. Like, how come I don't know about any of this stuff? Is my head in the sand personally? And so I personally have joined everything, but you know, we no longer need to be the best kept secret. We have some gold mines here in this city. And so I would think that my only recommendation would be is us marketing what great opportunities we have better, because that's just seems to be repetitive. And if everyone else's hearts are clear, we will thank Luke for his presentation and his time with us. And okay, Commissioner Faulkner.
I just thought of one last thing, and I'll be quick. We know many of our residents have the funding to buy to purchase housing. We're doing things for our affordable housing for those with lower incomes. But there's a subset of our community that is kind of growing here. It's our homeless. And I wanted to bring up, as we're talking about housing and what is there out there for them? I mean, what are we doing for them? Because it seems like the demographic is getting younger. They're starting to grow, and I see them on Temecula Parkway over where I live at, and up in where the Walmart is at. They kind of hang out there, but that population is growing here. And I don't know what you guys seeing in the numbers. So as we're talking about housing, what are we doing for that demographic as well? I just want to ask you that.
That's a tough question, and I think it's a tough question for everyone across the state. Is how you solve that problem. It's protracted and it's so frustrating because everything is focused like a laser on homelessness right now. The housing first, the money, the effort, everything's focused on it. And we just don't seem to be making a dent. It just seems to be getting worse. So I don't know if I can answer that question because I don't know if there's a good answer that I have. But I can tell you this, the tools that we have, and you guys all know Kevin, and his shop really is the experts and the boots on the ground dealing with this every day and has the experience. But from my purview, we are doing some things, albeit not enough. We do have a development that has come in that is applying for No Place Like Home funds, and No Place Like Home funds are for to get folks directly off the street. So it's a market rate development, but it'll have a component of 80 units that are strictly for folks that are homeless. It needs to get built. Right. We can't get them off the street until it gets built. So we're working on that. But beyond that, I know Kevin's team is working to get them off the street, get them reunited with their families, whatever it may be, get them into services. It's a really, really tough issue. And we've got limited tools really to make a dent.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Luke. And I know it's a challenge. I deal with in my job, veterans, and we experience homelessness and trying to fight that solution. And it's been one that they've been grappling and trying to get around on that side as well. So I totally understand. But I just want to bring that up because again, it's one of the demographics we should be looking at as well as we looking at shelter and housing. That kind of comes in there as well. So thanks a lot, Luke. Appreciate it.
I just want one last thing on that. We do have we have a cold winter or a winter shelter. It's kind of moved around, but it is something that we do, and we've worked with different groups in the past to get folks off the street during the coldest months of the year. So I mean, I just wanted to put that out there, just so you know, there are some things that are taking place.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Luke. Again, a very complex issue. I sit on several commissions from the state to the county to the city, and that is a question, and we are all trying to resolve this issue of homelessness. So I commend Temecula for their efforts, but it is an uphill battle.
It is.
So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, commissioners, for your questions. And now Luke, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. I'll see you guys soon.
Yes, thank you. And we'll go over to our public works presentation now.
All right, well, uh, Chair Baker and Commissioners, good evening.
Good evening.
And it's my pleasure to present an overview of the Public Works Department to you. And I'll be giving you an overview of the department, and then Avlin Odviar, one of our senior engineers, will be going into some more detail on some programs that the Public Works Department is involved with that we believe are of interest and related to your commission and what you've been charged with. So that'll be the program we'll be presenting. So Avlin, if you can share your screen, and we'll kick off the presentation here.
Absolutely. You guys see that okay?
All right. If you can jump to the next slide, Avlin. So the Public Works Department's mission statement, you can see it here on the screen. I'm not going to read it to you, but it essentially is we are responsible for the planning, design, construction, and then maintenance of all of the city's infrastructure. And in Temecula, that primarily consists of our road system, our road network, our parks, and our landscaping that the city maintains, and then our facilities, all the buildings and facilities that the city owns and operates and maintains. So that's basically what we do. And I've got a list of other public services that the city is not directly responsible for, but we have very close relationships with these other organizations that provide these services. So I know this might sound like we do less than we do, but I just wanted to mention some of these to you and let you know what agency is responsible for them. And many of these are public agencies and have their own board of directors and governing bodies, and some are private companies. And I'll kind of touch on each of them. But like I said, we have very close relationships with these because they do interface and interact with the city's infrastructure and city facilities and provide services to the residents in Temecula. So I wanted you to know who they are and be familiar with them. And if you did have any questions or anything related to any of these other agencies, like I said, we have very close connections and relationships with them. So we can answer any questions regarding them as well. So first of all, one of the things we don't do is we don't provide water, potable water and sewer services here in Temecula. Those are primarily provided by the Rancho California Water District and the Eastern Municipal Water District, both of which are public agencies and have their own elected board of directors. You may see elections of their board members on the ballots that you vote on, similar to the council members and other elected officials. So those are the agencies that provide water and sewer in Temecula. They use the city's roads or right-of-way for those services, and we do oversee the roads. So we do issue permits to them for new construction projects and things like that, but we do not directly provide those services or own or operate those systems. Electric and gas services, that's Southern California Edison and Southern California Gas. And I'm sure you're all familiar with them. You've got those services at your homes. Again, those are investor-owned utilities. So they're private companies. They are regulated by the California Public Utility Commission. And again, we have close relationships with them because of the fact that they do occupy the city's roads for their services. Matter of fact, we have what are called franchise agreements with each of those for their ability to use the public roads. The telecom companies, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, that provide the telephone, internet, and even wireless services now. Those are all private companies, but again, they do occupy the city's right-of-way. Those are actually franchised and regulated through the state. But because of the fact that they do use the city's right-of-way, we permit when they are doing work in the right-of-way and to have contacts and relationships with them. Solid waste and recycling services, that's provided by a company called CR&R in Temecula. We have a exclusive franchise agreement with CR&R for them to provide residential solid waste and recycling services, as well as commercial services to their commercial customers. They pay a franchise fee to the city for that exclusive franchise, and we do work very closely with them as well. We talked a little bit, or Luke mentioned a little bit about transit services in Temecula, and that's provided by, as he mentioned, the Riverside Transit Agency. So again, they provide the bus services and bus routes and planning and operation of those services. And we have a relationship with them as far as their planning and their execution of those services. The freeways, so or primarily one freeway in Temecula, I-15, and then I-215, the interstate freeways. The city doesn't manage those. Those are managed by the California Department of Transportation, also known as Caltrans. The two state routes, 79 North and 79 South, or Winchester and Temecula Parkway, prior to those being taken over by the city within our city limits, those were owned and maintained by Caltrans, but the city took over those roads when we incorporated. So those are now within the city limits, those are now maintained by the city. But once you get outside of the city limits, those routes are state owned and maintained. And then lastly, the creeks, the main creeks in the city, Temecula Creek, and some of the other larger drainage facilities are maintained by the Riverside County Flood Control District, which is an entity of Riverside County. The city maintains all of the drainage systems, and we kind of use a cutoff of a 42-inch diameter pipe or smaller, which is the majority of the pipes and storm drains in the roads are maintained by the city. And then the larger channels are maintained by the Flood Control District. And again, we have a close working relationship with that agency. So if you can jump to the next slide, Avlin. So this is our org chart, and I'm going to just go through this real quickly. We're broken down into two primary operating divisions, our engineering division and our maintenance division. We've got a total of approximately 45 employees amongst those two divisions, roughly equally split between the engineering and maintenance divisions. So within engineering, our land development engineering division works closely with Luke's team on reviewing new development projects, writing conditions of approval or the requirements for those new developments to build the city's infrastructure. So any new development project that comes in is required to construct improvements for their projects, both kind of the basic requirement of the road in front of the project, and then they're also required to do studies that identify what other improvements that they may impact and are required to construct. So say, for example, the Heirloom Farms project Luke mentioned, they're required to put in a traffic signal at Inez and Waverly. So that'll be a new traffic signal that goes in there that's done before they actually even start building. Traffic engineering, that's our staff who oversee all of our traffic issues. So we're the staff liaisons to the Traffic Safety Commission that meets monthly, similar to you. We handle anything related to traffic. So we operate, maintain all of our traffic signals. We have about 125 traffic signals in the city. We have communications to all those traffic signals at our traffic operations center at City Hall, so we can monitor the operation of all those and keep them running smoothly, hopefully. Speed surveys, we set the speed limits based on state requirements, do all the maintenance of the traffic signals, signing and striping, all the roadway signs and pavement striping you see is all analyzed, planned, and maintained by city staff. And then we handle resident requests. So if someone thinks that there needs to be a four-way stop somewhere or a new stop sign put in, they can submit that request into us. We'll evaluate that. There's typically guidelines for when traffic control devices are necessary. So we'll do an analysis on that and then report to either the commission or the council on whether or not it's recommended to put those in. So that's our traffic engineering. Capital projects administration. So this is the part of our team that does the planning and design, and then manages the construction of our new infrastructure and capital projects. We input into the what we call the CIP budget, which is done in parallel with our operating budget every year. Our CIP budget, including all of the capital projects that are done, we do a 5-year capital improvement budget. So we budget for projects over the next 5 years, and that budget over 5 years usually runs somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 million. So very large programming of projects and funding. Many different funding sources go into all those different projects, and that budget, like I said, is put together along with the operating budget and then adopted by the council every year. I believe this commission did receive a presentation by the finance department with a request for input on our budgets, and that will be taken into account as we put that budget document together, and then ultimately it goes to council for approval in May and June this year. So that's our engineering operations. Our maintenance operations, street maintenance, maintain all of our roadway systems and anything to do with the roads. We've got about 350 miles of public roads in Temecula. And just to give you an idea, so that's roughly about how far it is to Phoenix from here. So you could drive from here to Phoenix and not have driven on every public road in Temecula. Our facilities maintenance team maintains all of our city-owned buildings. So the Civic Center, library, CRC, all the city-owned buildings. We have about 600,000 square feet of buildings that we maintain, the entire components of those buildings. And then finally, parks and landscape maintenance. That's the folks that oversee the maintenance of all of our parks. We have about 40 parks in Temecula. As well as all of the other roadway landscaping. We maintain landscaping through some assessment districts for some what we call slopes, or the perimeter of some of the private developments, and that's all done through assessments for those that are charged to those property owners. So that's an overview of what Public Works does. Oblin, if you can jump to the next slide. Just got some pictures of some projects and things that we've done here lately. You can see kind of there in the upper left, the Main Street Bridge was a project that was constructed by the city, actually through a contractor. And Oblin's going to talk a little bit about our contracting procedures. The pump tracks in there, that's a new project that we added at very popular attraction at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. You can see some of the new playgrounds that have been constructed. One of the emphasis of council has been to redo a lot of our older park playgrounds. We've been doing them with themes, and starting with the older parks and kind of moving in towards the newer parks. Picture there in the middle is the
Veterans Memorial.
Veterans Memorial. That's that's located at the Duck Pond and was put in recognition of the military members from the city that have lost their lives in combat. And then lastly, on the bottom right there, that's an overview of the new freeway interchange that was put in at 70 South or Temecula Parkway and I-15. And that's a project that was actually funded and overseen by the city. And I mentioned earlier that the city doesn't own and maintain the freeways. However, in Temecula, we've taken the initiative when there's need for freeway improvements to attempt to bring those forward ourselves. So we do that with the oversight of Caltrans, but it's been, something that this city has done, which is somewhat unusual, is put together funding and then overseen projects to improve the interstate freeways. And so that's the 79 South Temecula Parkway interchange. We've got another very large freeway project that we've been working on for a number of years now that we're hoping to start construction on next year. You'll probably all be glad to hear this, but this is to address the congestion on the 15 freeway, particularly northbound. You've probably all sat in that traffic coming home if you've been down in San Diego. And we've got about a $130 million project that we've got the funding for now. We just got a $50 million grant from the US DOT to be able to deliver this project. It's to add a couple of lanes to the 15 northbound from Winchester up to the 215 and then a flyover bridge, and that's all to ease that congestion on the northbound 15. So long project, long in the making, and we're really close to being able to be able to bid that out and start construction on that next year. So one more slide, Evelyn. You can see a picture of a traffic signal. In the middle there is the roundabout that was installed at Inez and La Paz, and kind of a new type of a traffic control feature. It's working great. We really addressed a congestion issue there at that intersection, and you may see more of these coming up here sometime in the near future. It's pretty widely used in Europe, and a lot of other cities are starting to use this type of improvement at intersections. And then last thing I wanted to mention in the upper right is a picture of a road maintenance project that we did. And about 4 years ago, we did a new what we call pavement management study or pavement management plan. So we hired a consultant, went out and addressed and analyzed the condition of every public road in the city, and determined the condition and kind of prioritized how and when it needed to be maintained. And so established a multi-year program. As I mentioned, we've got about 350 miles of roads in the city. We spend typically around $7 or $8 million a year on average in road maintenance, and attempt to do those projects as they come up as the highest priority in that pavement management program, and do the best we can to keep up with the condition of our roads. We've got a number of road maintenance projects coming up here later this year. Inez Road north of Winchester is getting a new asphalt overlay. We're resurfacing all the West Side Business Center. Going to be doing Paba and Butterfield Stage Road later this year. And then we just continue to do more of those projects as they come up in the priority list. So we're, just kind of as a rule of thumb, we're looking at doing, roughly 10% of our road system every year. So about 35 miles of roads with either a slurry seal or an asphalt overlay. And then as they come up again, 10 years later, we'll be doing those again. So with that amount of funding, we think we can keep up with the condition that pavement management program specified. So that's kind of all I have in terms of the scope of public works. And then Odlin's going to talk about some specific programs and how we go about implementing a lot of our services.
Thank you, Pat. Can you guys all hear me okay? Thank you. Before I leave these slides, I did want to touch a couple things as far as community involvement with the projects that we do. That roundabout is the first one that we built here in the city as a public project. And that used to be a three-way stop, pretty heavily congested. And when a developer came up the street there, they were conditioned to install a traffic signal to help regulate the additional traffic. And as you can see from the aerial, this is in an area of town that's equestrian, country, a little lower density. And naturally, they didn't want a traffic signal in that neighborhood. And that's how we came to going with the roundabout. And I was, as an engineer, I was one of the first critics that drove through this all the time thinking it would not work, and it works beautifully. So another, example of community involvement and getting, just not just delivering the public works projects to get people where they need to go, but taking into account the wants, not just the needs. Also, I'll point out in the bottom left there, the old town boardwalks. Those were planks, railroad ties that were installed 20 some odd years ago in the fashion of the Old West, the heritage here in Temecula. And as we fast forward 25 years and we have increased awareness of special needs and accessibility and maintainability, it made sense to go with the concrete, essentially stamped concrete, to make it look like wood. And now we have something that is easily traversable, accessible by all, easy to maintain, while still maintaining, paying homage to our history here in Old Town. And if you'll all indulge me, because I am in charge of the slides, I'm going to go back one, which I hate when people do this, but I wanted to touch on these playgrounds. Extremely successful. Most of you probably grew up, at least some of you. I had monkey bars and slides that were pretty industrial, and when they broke, they put the same thing back in. These days, these themed playgrounds, which are being discussed and with subcommittees and sought with the community input, are resulting in multiple themes. And they are, as you can see, and if you haven't been to them, they are a very interactive, they're tactile, they're made for all kinds of things. It's not just climbing up a ladder, seeing if you could swing across and then sliding down. They're very textured. And they're, like I said, they're all themed. Again, pirates, nature, first responders. And again, this was through a process involving the public. But as Pat said, this division, we're responsible for putting the stuff into play. At the end of the day, we design, build, and then maintain stuff. And I'm not going to go through all these plans, but I did want to let you know that it's always done with a bigger picture in mind. And so Luke touched on the general plan, the quality of life master plan, and these others. And what I just wanted to say was, when we do get to a project, when we're going to execute it, as Pat indicated in the capital project improvement program, and I may be tasked with extending or widening a road, it's incumbent upon us to study the plans that have already been in play that say, okay, Alvin, now you know how big the road's supposed to be, but have you consulted the quality of life master plan? Are the core values, are there opportunities to include things as part of this project when you go to construct? Obviously, the ADA transition plan, that's a simple one. If I'm widening a road, Alvin, you better get those sidewalks in and those curb ramps and update all of that. Again, increasing accessibility and providing, public works for all of the public, essentially. And one thing that's probably evident and obvious, but I want to say that all these plans, and there's more of them that help guide us do the work that we do, they're not created in a bubble. It starts with staff and their expertise for planning, city planning. And it comes up to executives, it comes up to subcommittees, it goes out to the council, it goes to community workshops, and then it repeats back and forth until we have something that the city adopts. And really, it's an adopted working plan. These plans, as they're put together, consider the other plans. And so now when we go to actually do something, it's not just putting in a road, it's making sure that we're taking into the account all of this input from the community, as well as city staff. And I won't touch on the partnerships, but yeah, some of our partners that have public services within the city, obviously, and when we do our work, we do need to work with them. Framework, yeah, public works is pretty straightforward. When you're using public dollars, you will follow a set of rules that ensures equity and competitive. The California Public Contract Code is kind of contains everything that guides us when it comes to putting out a contract and administering it. The two things I pull from it for you guys is that, yes, it's centered around competitive bidding. It's public dollars, so you will let all of the public get a chance at it. I do not get to pick the best or the fastest or the highest rated contractor. We hire the lowest responsible bidder. again, providing that equity. And of course, in the contract code, there's laws, there's regulation that carries that fairness, not just for the contractor that I hire, but all of his subcontractors as well. The California Labor Code, obviously, if you want to work on a public project, you will pay prevailing wages. Another a good thing to ensure that at the end of the day, everyone that's working on a project is getting paid fairly. Engineering standards, we're all engineers, we could all design stuff, but we got to make sure that it fits with everyone else's. Fairly self-explanatory there. And I mentioned, I note the environmental law because having been involved in a lot of large project development, we always think about plants and animals when it comes to CEQA and NEPA, but they're the lesser known is the studying of settings that relate to people. So there are chapters on socioeconomics and community dividing and planning that must be considered when you do projects. So I'm touching, it's funny when I put these slides together, I keep putting public works and then dash the topic. And I hope no one here goes, oh, look, public works has REDI programs already in. It's not that per se, but what I wanted to help touch with you guys again in educating you on what we do. The nature of what we do in use of public dollars exposes us to a lot of things like the public contract code that have already been designed to kind of ensure fairness across the board. So I wanted to talk about a few of them that kind of come up with us repetitively. Local vendor preference program, you don't have to have that, but the city has adopted one. And the short of it is, it gives a 5% boost when consultants are proposing or vying for services here at the city. And at the end of the day, what that does is you get a little boost increase. It allows vendors, engineering firms, or consultants here in the city to actually work on the program and the projects in their community. And if you live and work in the place that you're doing stuff, there's a natural ownership that happens and a natural input because you are a member of the community. The disadvantaged business enterprise, maybe some of you are familiar with this. This is a very large federal program that's been in place for quite some time. Over the years, that has been the DB minority, the DB women's, the DB veterans. And over the years, they've kind of consolidated to say, this is going to be the disadvantaged business enterprise program. And I say federal, so where that comes into play for the city, at least in public works, is for those larger projects that Pat was talking about, the interchanges and the freeway stuff, and even maybe in the 10 million and up range. Yeah, we have a pretty big budget, but for public projects, it requires us to go find big dollars to do. That interchange that was shown at the end of the day was a $50 million project. We didn't pull that out of just city funds. That's just not feasible. So whenever we do have an element of federal assistance, a single dollar on a project, that's where this DBE comes into play. And I'll try and shorten it, but it is really complicated. But the program or the enterprise, the law, however you want to say it, the intent is to equitize socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And I pulled the bullet of African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, women, and others as directly from the program as automatically socially and economically disadvantaged. Other factors to get you qualified are small business. So individual net worth and average annual gross receipts could qualify you as being a DBE. And so what does that do? If you're a business owner, and I'll just use construction because that's where I see it all the time. Let's say I own a concrete company and I meet the criteria for the DBE. I will file my paperwork with the state or the federal government, and these databases are maintained, huge databases, and it's based on location and who you are and what you do. So that's all already in the system, if you will. Now, me, Ovlin, when I come and I have a project and I finish the design, I'm ready to go put my construction contract out to bid to the lowest responsible bidder. I will implement as part of my contracting bidding requirement, a DBE goal. And I will figure out that goal ahead of time by looking at the items of work in my contract that I'm going to let out. I will study the DBE database determine a reasonable percentage of what should be performed by a disadvantaged business enterprise. And that'll be based on the number of companies that are registered versus the total number of companies that do that specific line of work. And I'll go through that and establish a goal. And by way of example, let's just say I have a $10 million project that's going out, and my goal is 15% incorporated. Now, when bidders submit their bids, in order to be responsive and considered, it will mean that their workforce will include a dollar value of at least 15% of their bid, as shown being performed by a DBE. If it does not, you can still be eligible for the lowest bid. However, you will have to have proven what's called a good faith effort. And in the past, I know people have thought, oh, good faith effort, oh, I tried. If you've never analyzed one of these, it is pretty intense. It means for the contractor that comes in and said, oh, then your goal was 15%, I got 13. Well, we got to talk about that other two. And basically, he's got to submit the documentation showing the solicitation. And it's not just I put it in the newspaper, it is direct solicitation to the DBEs for a specific line of work and saying, I want a quote to do this. And if they don't respond, you got to show that you called them back. You got to show that you did it a couple times and had due diligence. And if they did respond and you did not select them, you have to show me that their quote was higher than the person that you did hire, which gets back to the competitive bidding. So it is a lot of work. It is a lot of legwork, but I will say the way that it's designed and in my experience, it has brought businesses to a larger table, which in the past they may not have been, or on projects that don't have this implemented. And you would think, not only is that a good thing to get others involved, but now some of these big contractors may now have relationships. I didn't know you did such good work. I'm going with the big guys because they got all these resources. But now that I've hired you, I may be hiring you on non-DBE jobs. So that's my spiel on DBE. And again, wherever we have federal funding, this element is required. So we do see it on a number of our projects, and it's largely on our big projects. The Cdbg I'm not going to go into because I know Luke covered it, but understand that some of our projects that we choose have those requirements, and we at Public Works, when we go to do them, trying to maximize the Cdbg allotment every year will result in projects directed toward these areas. More and more, this is not something that I've had a lot of experience over my years, but we're seeing a lot more of this, the disadvantaged community definitions, the DACs, as referred to. Lots of definitions out there. I decided to go with the Public Utilities Commission one because it seemed to cover overlap most of the ones that I've seen. But first of all, through census and tracts, it defines areas which are most suffer from economic, health, or environmental burdens, such as poverty, high unemployment, hazardous waste, health issues. And these communities are mapped, and you can go to websites and find them. And what we're seeing more and more of now that these are a little bit better defined, is some of the programs at the bottom that I listed there. ATP, that's something that we use on a lot of our projects to seek funding for, as well as the Prop 68 statewide program, are using DACs as a percentage of your scoring. So when I go to compete for funding under ATP for a bike trail or a roadway, I'm going to be competing with a lot of other public agencies, and the application that I put together will have a lot of things in it. And one of it will be, Evelyn, how is this project relieving DAC, if at all? So we're seeing how these programs, kind of like the DBE, as we keep participating in these programs for funding, that we are just perpetuating what these programs are all about. I listed the other three at the bottom there. I will say that in Public Works, we don't see this a lot, but as Pat and I were going over some of this stuff, you start researching, okay, well, what part of my job, is really tackling REDI issues. And in that research, you're like, hey, And I think, Pat, you found some of these, right? You're like, did you know that there was a SCE reduced rate program for, and we were like, well, we should tell the commission, even if it's not, public works, if you will. So, and like with everything else, it's right. Education is the key, right? If you don't know it's out there, and Edison, I think, has done a lot of work. And I myself, I have to, confess, didn't even know about these things that are designed to help, as a public utility. I'm sure they've been doing that for quite some time. Pat, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll just kind of add on to what Avlin was saying there as far as these programs go. And we've dealt with these over the years, and I would say even more frequently over the more recent years here. And as he mentioned, these programs have specific criteria for disadvantaged communities. And as a matter of fact, these programs really, that you get points when you apply for funding through these programs. You get points if the project is located in what's defined as a disadvantaged community. And to the extent of like that active transportation program, as Avlin was mentioning, it's a relatively new program in the state, but does provide a lot of funding for active transportation, which are basically for bicycle and pedestrian type facilities. And it's almost gotten to the point where they give you, out of 100 points, they give you 10 points if the project is located within a disadvantaged community. And it's almost gotten to the point where if the project is not located within a disadvantaged community and you don't get those 10 points, you're not going to get funding, because the scoring is so competitive that getting those 10 points makes a difference between getting funding and not getting funding. So, like Avlin was mentioning, a lot of great programs and funding programs geared to emphasize and provide funding for projects in disadvantaged communities. However, I'm not sure if Avlin, you're going to cover this, but it's somewhat of a double-edged sword for Temecula, because we do not have what are defined as disadvantaged communities. We've got a few areas in Temecula that qualify, but not very many. So, unless we're doing a project in a specific area, it's difficult to get the funding that's geared towards those areas. And then, like you said, these are just some programs that we've observed recently, and that this list could probably be much longer. And like Avlin mentioned, the SCE reduced rate program, that's available to any Edison customer who qualifies for that program. It's something that you apply for, and it's typically income based. So if you meet certain income requirements, you're eligible for a lower rate from Southern California Edison. Again, that's just something that we've come across. Doesn't directly affect us as city staffers, but as residents in the community, we thought it was of interest and something that the commission would want to know about. So, Avlin, unless you have anything else, I think that ends our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Avlin and Patrick. Commissioners who would like to jump in? Okay, Commissioner Warther.
Hi, thank you for your presentation again. They're always so great. I love hearing about the projects and what the cities are doing. But I just wanted to personally thank you for the calming measures out at Red Hawk Parkway and Bell Ranch Parkway and the restriping out there. I don't nearly hear as many cars speeding by as I used to. I don't know what the current stats are, but I feel like it has made a great improvement in the community, and I see more folks up there walking and riding their bikes and able to sleep better without hearing those speeding cars. So appreciate that, and thank you very much for that project.
I appreciate you saying that. And, like Avlin was mentioning earlier, when we do those kind of projects, we do a considerable amount of outreach to get input from residents that are going to potentially be affected. And we had, meetings and notices to the HOAs and attempted to get as much input on that project as we could. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that aren't as tuned in as others and don't hear about these projects. And so we did get some complaints from people who didn't like the reduction, from 2 lanes to 1 lane. But as you mentioned, it was all done to address the speeding and dangerous conditions. And we attempted to get as much input on that as we could, and it was approved by the commission and the council and implemented. And we think it did exactly what it was intended to, is reduce the speeding and improve the safety on the road. And again, appreciate your positive comments on that.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. I know a lot of my neighbors do, and I have small children. They utilize the parks out there, and we walk there. So as a parent, as a resident, I really appreciate it, and I can tell you for a fact that a lot of my neighbors do as well. So thank you.
Who was next? Commissioner Wilson was next.
Yes, I have a quick question. A couple of years ago, the city introduced, and I don't want to say it was a robot, but it's some type of device that used to go around the streets and to determine which streets needed repaving or had the potholes and all that. Do we still have that device?
Well, that actually was equipment that the consultant that we hired to do that pavement management study and plan owned. And that was you probably saw it. It was a van that had a bunch of cameras and radar equipment attached to it. And we had them, do that analysis on all of our roads at that time and determine what the rating of the road was based on that, using that equipment. So that is not something the city owns. Unfortunately, we don't have the capability of using that on a regular basis, but we did do a comprehensive review of all the roads with that equipment.
Okay, that's good. I'm sure Pechanga Parkway was one of them, because they're always doing so much construction there, and there's potholes all up and down Pechanga. We do get a lot of traffic because of Pechanga.
I'm gonna take this opportunity to throw in an ad here for the city's mobile app. So if you haven't seen it or you're not familiar with it, the city of Temecula has a mobile app, and on that app, there's one of the icons on there. It says report a problem, I think it says. You click on that, and then if you see a pothole or a graffiti or a homeless person or water running or whatever it is, you can report that using the app. It captures the location. You can take a picture, submit the picture, and that goes directly into our work order system and gets assigned out to our maintenance crews. So
that's perfect.
If you haven't used that app, it's a great tool, and we'd like to see that being used as much as possible. And on the like you said, on the potholes and things like that, feel free to report those with the app or call us or whatever you need to do to let us know, and we can get on that pretty quickly.
I will. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Patrick.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Thank you. I want to just make a couple comments, and I got a couple questions. I've used the city a lot. I had a tree that I had a problem with. The response time was amazing. This was before app, several years ago. Your team came out right off the bat and got on top of it. Also used the system to report lights that were out on our street. The response time was amazing. I think less than 72 hours. But they came out and corrected that. So, and I just initially used your app. I was reporting. I was doing a trail, one of the trails in Temecula, and reported some trash that may have been, some homeless. I mean, I don't know if it was them, but it was a lot of trash in the area. So when they responded right away, gave me an email back saying, "Hey, we're going to be on it. We'll get somebody on it." So kudos on you guys for that. Veterans Memorial, the Veterans Memorial is awesome. I've been over there several times at the Duck Pond. That's a great thing, and glad you guys keeping your focus on veterans here in the city of Temecula. The roundabout, I use it a lot. I really like the fact that you guys put that. I think it's a horse in the center of it. That's amazing for the area because you're keeping that style and keeping that that feeling that, hey, there's a sense of belonging. Although it's a roundabout, you may not like it, but guess what? You put a little artistic approach to it, and it looks really nice going through there. So, and I think it definitely helps out with the traffic over there. Just me speaking on me. So I really like that. The Stephen Lennon Jr. Memorial Park. I said it before, but I'm gonna say it again. That park was dead. I mean, nobody was going to it. I used to walk by there every day. You guys has placed some life into that park. So now where people can't even park to get their kids into the park now. So that shows you the impact that these changes with these parks as we come back out and kids are engaging one another. It's inclusive and they have access close to their homes now. But that park was dead. I used to get depressed walking by it. But it is alive and kicking right now. So kudos on you on that. And a couple of questions. So transportation areas, like I know RTA controls the transportation for the area, but in Temecula off of Margarita over by Stater Brothers, there's just a bench sitting there, and I know there's some construction going on right there, like they moved that bench and there's something going on right there right now. But I don't know if we've looked at all our transit sites for people waiting for transportation to provide some shade, particularly in the summer. Just the bench doesn't get it for me. So if because there's already a complaint about RTA and transportation not having enough of it. And if people are waiting there for long periods of time in the sun without some type of shade, and you may have been looking at it already, is there an opportunity to look at some of our sites across the city to make sure that, for our citizens, we're keeping some shade in the area while they're waiting on transportation, particularly if they're going to be there for long periods of time. So I just bring that up as a question to you guys. The on-off ramps, I may have missed it. Do the on-off ramps belong to the city or the Caltrans?
Those are Caltrans.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it. And one last question was on the DBE that you reported on the PowerPoint under the DBE. It said Asian Pacific subcontinent Asian Americans. For me, can you break that down? What does that mean? And people may know, but I don't. So can you break that down? What does that mean? What specific group are we looking at with that?
I cannot. I typed that directly off of the website that talked about. Again, it's a federal program. The definition comes from them. I do not know.
Yeah, I just wanted to know because normally it's Asian and Pacific Islanders, but this breaks it down even further to the subcontinent, and it's trying to figure out what does that mean when you're talking about subcontinent. So if I could get that answer back, because I really don't know what that means, and I don't know if the other commissioners know what it means, but do our citizens know what that means? So yeah, we can define that a little bit more. I knew what all the other groups were, but that one kind of stood out. So I'm like, does that mean in regards to that as well? So thank you. That's all the questions I have. Appreciate it.
I can get that. I'll look up that subcontinent Asian for you. Pat, do you want to talk about shade structures at bus stops?
Yeah, the shade structures, since the bus service is all under RTA, we haven't gotten too involved in the the stops and the benches and the structures. We do we actually have an agreement with the Rotary Club to maintain the benches at the stops. So that's all provided by the Rotary Club, who gets paid by the city. So it's like a fundraising program for the Rotary Club where they do the maintenance, and then the city pays them for that. The shelters, the ones that we do have, most of them were actually put in as part of a grant that was awarded to the city and RTA a number of years ago. Unfortunately, we don't have any money budgeted specifically for bus stops and bus shelters, but we can certainly try to contact RTA and see if there isn't any other funds that we could potentially use for that.
Yeah, I'll just ask because normally I see our elderly standing there in the sun, or handicapped sitting there in the sun, you know, so it's got to be draining if they're sitting there waiting for long periods of, you know, time. So I just bring it up as what is my visual picture. So yes.
Yeah. They and the way RTA evaluates whether or not they put a bus or a shelter in is based on the ridership. So the stops that have the most use are the ones that they're looking at specifically. So, but we can certainly contact them and see if there isn't something we can try to get going as far as adding some new shelters in the city here.
Commissioner Harris, I saw you were next.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciated it. And I wanted to say thank you to Alvin for bringing up a really important point, one that is particularly special to me, which is CEQA environmental regulations. And really, you brought up an important point, which is that there is a misconception on what environmental regulations are for. A lot of people think that it's just to protect the surrounding environment, but really it's about protecting individuals' health. And also, you made a point of addressing the socioeconomic impacts, because there is a deep connection between access to healthy green spaces, clean air, and really the color of your skin and which community you live in. Particularly disadvantaged communities are disproportionately affected by lack of access to a healthy environment. So outside of following CEQA, is there any other guidelines that the city promotes or language that's included in our general plan that promotes kind of environmental health, natural green spaces, and ensuring that that is shared equitably across Temecula?
Well, I'll start off. Answering that, and I'll have something that we've done along with WRCOG and some of the other cities in Southwest Riverside County is to prepare what's called a climate action plan, if you're familiar with that term.
Yes.
And we're actually going to be updating that as part of the general plan update. So the work that Luke had referred to previously, the general plan update, one of those documents will be a climate action plan specifically for the city of Temecula. What that's for is it's actually required by state law now, and it's all intended to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. So, and there are specific reduction targets and requirements that the state has that must be included in that plan. So we'll be working on that as part of the general plan update. And if you're involved in that process, I'm sure you'll hear about the preparation of the climate action plan, and that'll then drive how we go about working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improving our environment in general throughout the city. So that's one program that is geared towards environmental quality, and one of the other aspects of the designation of the disadvantaged communities that Avlin referred to also, and this is something that I really wasn't very familiar with up until recently. Is one of the ways of defining the disadvantaged communities is by this Cal Enviro score. And it's actually a database and mapping system that the state has that takes into account all those factors like air quality and socioeconomics and all that, and then gives a score that's referred to as the Cal Enviro score. And depending upon your score, it determines whether or not you're considered a disadvantaged community. Unfortunately for us, again, we don't have any geographic areas in Temecula that are of a score that actually qualifies for the programs that provide funding for those disadvantaged communities. And there's some logic to that, because if you look at the state overall and where those enviro scores are the worst, it's in the more densely populated areas where there is more pollution and worse air quality and that kind of thing. And so they're the ones that have the lower scores. And so some of those programs, the funding really is geared more towards those areas than for Temecula, unfortunately. But again, we'll be doing our climate action plan, and I'm sure several other programs that are intended to address the environmental quality issues.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. I really appreciate it. And just to backtrack a little bit, and anyone can feel free to answer. This CDBG, their underserved census tracts. Would you have an understanding, or could you lead me in the direction of resources to figuring out exactly where those tracts are within our city, where they are located?
Yes, and we can provide that information to you. We've got that information on which of those tracts are qualified for the CDBG funding programs.
My next question is, has there been like any demographic analysis of the individuals who are living in that area or in those areas?
Well, the only information would be what's reported in the census database. So that's all related to when, and then the census being, and Randy may be able to comment on this as far as the updating of the census, the information that's collected and then used to establish the qualified tracts. Is there, Randy, do you have an update on what the latest is on the new census?
Yeah, Commissioner Harris, I appreciate you asking that question. I made a note of it as well. So the data is likely to now come out September 30th, is what the federal government has said. That means we in the city of Temecula will not get our adjusted numbers until most likely in October, because the state takes that raw data and then apportions the numbers accordingly for a variety of factors, prison populations, all kinds of different things. And then we will turn around and 30 days later, go ahead and get that data. It's with that data that we'll be not only doing the CDBG kind of programming and all of these other programmings, but that's the data that we'll be using for redistricting as well. So okay. I can get you, I can actually get you the current tracks, and I believe I do have a copy of 2018 or maybe even 2019 tracks in the city of Temecula that actually shows which racial demographics live in which areas of the city and so on and so forth. So I can give you the latest and I'll send that out in the after action.
Thank you so much. I know that we had discussed it quite a bit before, and I'd expressed my concerns with just 10 years is a lot of time for a rapidly growing city to have a complete idea of who is living where. And when it comes down to resource allocation, that is very, very important. So I'm very interested to see what the new census comes out with and how we can move forward with that information, and we could, create analysis and specifically to explore where these communities are they close to industry, and how are we also taking into account that they aren't exposed to any particular amount of environmental pollution or just environmental degradation that might be harmful to themselves. That's really important. There's some really important linkages to be made there. Just one in particular, but thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. That's all for me.
Our hearts clear, Commissioners. We want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming out. This was a very good presentation for me. This is not my wheelhouse, but I learned a lot. And I appreciate you bringing the REDI information as well, because it was just very informative. And so we thank you for your efforts and thank you for your hard work, and have a wonderful rest of the evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Erica, we're going to go on to public comments now. So we'll turn not the floor, I guess, the Zoom over to you.
Okay, we do have 3 public comments. I'll go ahead and read the rules. A total of 30 minutes is provided for members of the public to address the Race, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Commission on items that appear on the consent calendar or a matter not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. For all business items on the agenda, each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. For this meeting, public comments may be submitted and read into the record pursuant to the important notice provided at the top of this agenda. Our first public comment is from Bob Cowell. Critical race theory is systemic racism based on a person's skin color. It teaches that all white people are racist for being white. This is racism. It perpetuates hate and causes division. And white American people were systemically racist, then why have so many people immigrated here from all over the world? Critical race theory divides. It does not unite. Critical race theory is not based on common sense. Critical race theory believes dialogue is evil. Without dialogue, we have totalitarian system. Critical race theory is evil, against the law, and should be banned from schools, city hall, and all public requirements within the city. People that teach it are just bad people. Critical race theory is so hateful that it causes white kids to feel that something is wrong with them for just being white. This causes depression and suicide. To the mysterious PJ who makes comments as these forums, why do you hide your name? You mentioned that I don't live in the city, so therefore I don't have a voice. I do have connections with the city. However, as I am the president of the Marietta Temecula Republican Assembly. The next speaker is PJ in Temecula. Thank you, members of the REDI Commission, for allowing me time to speak. First, I would like to commend all of you for volunteering your time for service in our community on a commission that is so crucial to the progression of our city and our community. I assume that each and every one of you are embarking on this journey with the right intentions, and I wish you well in your work and truly hope you will open some eyes in the city. As we know, there were those that wanted to sabotage the commission and thus deny the diversity of thought and experiences from being discussed and promoted by this commission. These are those like outside agitator Bob Cowell, who despite living in Marietta, can't mind his own business and feels compelled to criticize and deny the ambitions of this commission. This is a person who fought tooth and nail to deny existence of systemic racism or biasm, bigotry, or racism otherwise within our community. In his personal all-white team, that our community didn't have an issue with racism, bias, or bigotry. But I think it comes from somewhere more experiential, and for that reason, I believe he disqualifies himself from commenting on issues of diversity. You see, Bob comes from a generation that failed, a generation that actively squashed diverse opinions, denied diverse peoples having a say in our communities and nationwide. They took joy in it. As part of the generation, his likely inaction, his likely unwillingness to stand up for his fellow man, no matter their color or nationality, well, that was par for the course. But Bob is getting older now, more frail, less able to defend himself on those he loves. Deep down, he wonders what will happen to the great white nation he once utilized for his own profit while denying certain segments of the population the same opportunities. He sees people engaging with different cultures. He sees people mingling and mixing, and he sees progress among the people while they work toward creating a better society, city, nation, and world. And that scares Bob. But pay Bob no mind. He and his generation had their chance to destroy the social cancer that is racism and bigotry. And not only did they fail, but they also worked to promote it, just as he does today. Bob's generation is leaving us. Bob's generation failed our society. It is now our responsibility to work until we do what Bob and his brethren couldn't do, the right thing. Excuse me. One city is only as strong as its weakest, but most vulnerable member. Thank goodness Bob lives in Marietta. The last public comment is from Julie Geary. Hello, I'm Julie Geary, and I have lived in
the Valley since 1997. I want to commend the important work that REDI Commission is doing in Temecula. I'm so glad that you are all serving to make the city a better and more inclusive place for all in the community. What you are doing is not easy and may be fought with criticism from those who do not understand the importance and value that you are bringing to the city. We need you. You are here to uplift the voices and needs of the community that have been overlooked and underrepresented. Those that condemn your words and chastise your efforts have yet to see the world is a better, brighter place when we all have a seat at the table. Please keep speaking up if your voices shakes. Please keep doing the work, even though it is hard. Ask tough questions, demand accountability, and keep marching towards a bright future for Temecula, the city we love. And thank you for the work you are doing.
Thank you,
That's
Erica. Thank you so much. Let's go to the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 11, 2021?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any corrections, comments? Okay, Erica, seeing that there's none, take the roll, please.
Okay, I have a motion from Wilson and a second from Faulkner. Is that correct? Okay, so roll call vote. Chair Baker,
Aye.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Aye.
Commissioner Harris,
Aye.
Vice Chair Huerta,
Aye.
Commissioner Pastorian,
Aye.
Commissioner Steed,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Now to new business. We will have the REDI initiative update. Is that you, Ms. Randy?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair, members of the commission and members of the public. We are here tonight under business item to go ahead and give you an update on the REDI initiative and then also ask for some recommendations from you all. So we're going to go ahead and share this screen. All right. Can you guys all see that? Okay. So I wanted to give you guys a quick update on what is happening with the REDI initiative before we get into a couple of the recommendations that we're asking for you for tonight. So as you know, the City Council approved the REDI initiative back in July 2020. And the core principles in there were really geared towards normalizing the conversation around REDI, operationalizing some action around REDI, and then obviously organizing some sort of a sustainable effort so that we can make sure that REDI becomes a regular part of our community, our operations, as we move forward in our community. So phase one, you'll see that with respect to some internal operations that we needed to adjust with respect to council members all wanting to be equally engaged in this space. Those things under phase one are complete. The City Council did go ahead and adopt a resolution as well. It's actually a part of that resolution that there is a specific definition of the equity, diversity, and inclusion piece. And as we move forward in developing the equity value in those presentations, you'll be hearing more about those definitions as well. With respect to professional diversity and equity training, the City Council did have their second training this last Monday, I believe it was, this maybe Tuesday. And so we're actually going to go ahead and move up the REDI Commission next for this. And then we'll be looking at, we switched the directors and the commissions. So now that the council has completed REDI 101 and 201, I believe that's the series, the REDI Commission based on NLC's availability will be up next. So we're hopeful that we're going to be able to schedule that sooner than later. And as soon as I have some dates down, I will definitely be letting you know that. Because the training is available to all of you collectively as one body, it is subject to Brown Act. So it, just like the City Council, it will be a public special meeting to receive that training. And then lastly, we have some professional media relations training for the City Council that's also being worked through. With respect to phase one, we also completed the following 3 items. So we had some internal initial conversations with law enforcement that we needed to understand. In phase 2, there's ongoing communication with law enforcement as well, but there was just some basic information that we needed to know internally, and those items were done. Those communication with community initially, one-way listening sessions, pretty much at last summer into the fall, those things were completed as well. And then obviously the creation of a board or commission. You all are sitting here on Zoom in thumbnail size, so that item is done as well. So now we're starting to move into phase 2, and this is where we're really going to need some input from you all, because as you'll remember, phase 1 was more internal facing, and phase 2 was really outward community facing. Now, obviously, there is some contingency upon phase 1 completion, specifically your training, and also COVID-19 pandemic conditions. So that opportunity to really go ahead and go out into the community and engage with the community in a variety of ways, that is something that we're already starting to look towards and go ahead and develop some sort of planning around what that could look like. And we're hopeful that this commission will give us some feedback on that, some recommendations on that, and then the City Council will approve the final community outreach engagement plan on what that will look like. And then obviously some communication, as I mentioned, with law enforcement on an ongoing basis as well. We have a City Council protocol manual that we'll be doing in phase 2. And then we're already undertaking some of the citywide policies and programs. So each department is looking, at some of the policies, programs that they have in place, and trying to identify opportunities for additional diversity and inclusion of underrepresented community populations. You heard some of that from Luke today. Some of this is already in our policies and programs, but there's always room for improvement. And those are some of those business items that you guys are going to start to see before you as well. And then phase 3, this is really about that organizing the sustainable effort, right? This is the piece about we're having a refreshed budget process. This was the first year that we went to all of the commissions to get their feedback on budget priorities. And so this is really going to be a continuing, ongoing piece of how do we make sure that the community is actively engaging in the budget process. As we know, that's really important, so that we hear the community's voice on how the money, the funding, the resources are to be spent in the community. And my personal favorite, the Quality of Life Master Plan, the addition of an equity value to demonstrate the city's long-term commitment to equity for all residents. This piece is absolutely vital. As Luke mentioned, we've had that Quality of Life Master Plan for quite some time, and there are only 6 values in there right now. For us to be able to add an equity value, the City Council approved the addition of an equity value into the next Quality of Life Master Plan, which will take us the next 20, 30 years into the future. That is absolutely vital, because those values are directly tied to our independent department goals every year, the budget, all of that. So that's really important. So what I need from you guys tonight is I'm going to ask you specifically, I need 2 recommendations from you. The first is, as we start to look into phase 2, and obviously notwithstanding COVID restrictions and reopening efforts for gatherings and community gatherings and all of that, we're really trying to get a sense from the commission on what your recommendations would be on how to engage the community collectively. And then what would happen is here at this public meeting, we'll go ahead and take your guys' recommendations And then we would bring those forward to the City Council for official adoption and approval. But this is really important because while there's been a lot of thought and conversation over the last year, really by a variety of folks in the community, inside City Hall, with different commissions, council members, about a desire to connect and engage the community. Now we're getting into that process where we're formally developing those recommendations and that community engagement plan. The second thing I want to get from you guys tonight is as the internal presentations are concluding, so next month will be the last of it. Next month, we will be hearing from police and fire. And then we're going to begin some external presentations. And this was really important because what we know is that there are a lot of folks out there in the community that are working in the REDI space. So the goal is how do we, with our community stakeholders, really maximize our synergy, maximize our efforts, avoid duplication, and really solidify those numbers with our community stakeholders and really make sure that we're reaching everybody in the community. And we know that Temecula Valley Unified School District is doing something in the REDI space. We know the Chamber of Commerce is doing something in the REDI space. Mount San Jacinto, Pechanga has had a long history of this, obviously, and Rancho Community Church as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Madam Chair, I'm going to ask you to facilitate the conversation around question number 1 first. What does the commission envision, see around what the community engagement in this space can look like?
Well, I'll start off with that part for me personally. I think safe spaces to have dialogue and understanding simply of terms of what these REDI, race, equity, diversity, and inclusion means something so very different even to the people that are here. So in addition to the safe space, also an opportunity for storytelling. It's a very powerful tool. And again, I cannot emphasize enough for a safe space. So that will look like, even if we are on Zooms, smaller, you can do town halls or group things on Zooms, but smaller Zooms, not larger to the community, not like 100 people, because then you won't have a robust conversation. Maybe having some topics. So, today's topic is, inclusion. That seems to be the word that comes up, or that I've heard from the city council. And I personally think it's a good word to really think about, is inclusion. And people that just want to learn and also have some practical terms, some practical application of what that looks like. And last, but certainly not least, this is my wheelhouse. This is what my heart and passion is to not blame or shame people, to create spaces where people are not blamed or shamed, but they are educated and then held accountable for what they know. To me, that's the healthiest part of this dialogue. And again, I will turn it over. Commissioner Steed, I see you. So going on. So I see all of you, but she's right next to me. So I'll open it up to her and I'll pause for now, because this is where I can just go on and on forever. Go ahead, Commissioner Steed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love the part you added about not blamed or shamed. I think we've all walked different journeys in our lives to get us to where we are, and we've all had very different experiences. And because I haven't had the experience that you have, doesn't mean that it didn't happen. So it's your truth and it's happened to you. My life is obviously very, very different. I grew up in a different country, came here and had different experiences. But it's because of those experiences that my eyes are open. I know that I, as an immigrant, have never been treated differently to any other white person in this country. So that is what rings home to me about this REDI Commission. So I think our responsibility as a commission and what we send out into our community, I think it's very important that we have open ears and open dialogue, and we understand that everybody comes from different places. And that's not a bad thing, because we're going to meet in the middle. We're going to enable each other to educate each other. My heart's always going to be in the right place. I might not always say the right thing, and I don't know that I'm not saying the right thing, right? Because of my past experiences. So I think when you talk about not blaming or shaming people, just because I'm on the REDI Commission doesn't mean I'm this perfect person that understands everything about the needs of people of color or the needs of people with special needs. I mean, it just doesn't mean that. It means that I am learning like everybody else here. So our community is learning, and it's not about pointing fingers. It's about us providing resources so we're all in this together. Everybody gets a fair shake, everybody gets educated, and we join together as this super strong, beautiful community that just wants to love each other and wants to see everybody prosper and get to that next phase of life where this conversation will start going away, because ultimately that's what we all want.
Yes, thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Go ahead, Commissioner Harris. I see you next. I know all of you are chomping at the bit. This is just what we've been waiting for. So we're just excited.
This is really exciting. It's a really exciting point. And I believe, Chairwoman Baker, that you touched upon something that I have been thinking about, particularly just today, but even beyond that, is trying to really explore that question that you posed. How can we engage with the community despite thinking about like COVID restrictions? And something that came to my mind is that I'm looking for these particular groups and areas where we could go. I think what would be really important is to create a space, to have a space where we can have, you know, these have town halls and discussions regarding equality and race and time for storytelling, and really a central like hub that is really all about community building. We might, from the ground up, just like you did with the REDI Commission, have to create a space within the city where community members can come together and we can have these conversations and really create these safe spaces where people can talk and also very much learn. And I don't know if we're going to the second question, but
just the first one for now. We're gonna
just the first one. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting
we'll go
too
back.
excited.
Don't worry.
We'll go back. Okay, but I think it would be a really, great and immense opportunity to create a space, a safe space, a targeted area, whether or not I love outdoor classrooms, thinking park style, thinking community garden space, just a space that is designated for this, I think would be awesome. Also, I think that we've touched a lot upon the importance of creating safe spaces for every individual in the community to speak about race and their experiences. But I just feel like acknowledging all of us here in this space and in the spaces to come, people of color, people of diverse backgrounds, the immense kind of burden sometimes that could be on us to educate and to listen and to correct. And although it's necessary for us to all come together and explore and feel safe, it also comes at an extreme, social and emotional cost for us collectively as a community and individually. And I think that just making that point, I very much believe in safe spaces, but we also acknowledge just the cost. It comes at a cost, but it's for the social good. It's for creating a better, closer society, better, closer community. But that's it for my first.
See, Commissioner Pastorian, I want to piggyback off of what she's saying, because I think that's so important. You know, for me personally, I've been trying to figure out how to utilize the space as Tiffany. Like Tiffany sitting on this commission. And so I think a part of what we need to do just as commissioners is be allowed to, given an opportunity to bring ourselves to this space. That's the first diversity that we need to have. I feel like I don't know these people. I don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about me. And how can we really work together as a team if we are not even having an opportunity to know each other? And I think because we're not creating spaces for us even to know each other, it's already breeding what our city's dealing with, the lack of understanding and inclusivity. In the burden, I think we need to be unmuzzled to be able to say the burdens that we're carrying, even as commissioners, if that's what you're carrying. I was going to have this conversation anyway, for me personally, because I just need to bring Tiffany to this space. Who is Tiffany? Why do you have me on this commission? Who do I represent? Why does this matter to me? And what voice can I lend and lift up to help bring healing? So us also being able to be activated in our individual identities on this commission, I think is very important. Commissioner Pastorian.
Thank you. You kind of took a lot of the words right out of my mouth on that one for sure. I definitely feel all of that. You said a couple of things and you were absolutely correct. You know, safe space, 100%, you know, we need to create that place where voices can be heard, emotions can be felt, and connections can happen. And, you know, we have to realize that a lot of the things that this commission is challenged with and faced with, and also given the opportunity to deal with, is partly healing has to occur first. And so we have to be able to really address that a little bit. And part of that, like you said, Chairwoman Baker, that we have to get to a place where we can bring our individual stories to the surface in order for our public to know who we are, so that we can generate that connection, so we can give the proper recommendations to City Council when those times come. And so much of that is based on how we engage the public. So, and Randy and I've had this conversation, in fact, a couple of different times. It's something I'm super passionate about in terms of collaboration and creating that connection. We have to build it. You know, you touched on something, Commissioner Harris, and I agree with you 100%. Outdoor classrooms, where is that space in creating it? I would recommend, as probably a less strong word than I'd like to use, that Friendship Park be that place. That was the initiative and the idea in which it was created. That was what you know, Councilmember Nagar had in mind when he started this. This is something that I think we should absolutely continue that legacy. It appeals to everything culturally and also in terms of our special needs community. We're really embracing so many things at that park. And one of those things is, you know, what about a day at the park, you know, Randy, or coffee at the park, and, you know, having us take advantage of exactly our vision and the recommendations that we've made to community service with regard to that, but also allow that to be the place where people can 100% speak their mind and feel at peace and open their hearts to all the things that we're trying to address as part of this commission. So I think that would be something that would be pretty passionate in terms of where I would stand as a person making a recommendation, you know, is that park be that space. But again, how we create it, I think Commissioner Steed also made some really positive points in terms of we need to have the resources and the tools ready to avail ourselves, because I think that this commission is once we do this and we put ourselves out there in terms of engaging the public, people will see us not necessarily as just the people who are making recommendations as a commission to the city council. We will become more than that. And so, that's something that's really important. We need to be able to have these conversations. And some of that is perhaps, REDI icebreakers, if you will. And that's kind of a very lax term, but that's a way to get to know our public as well. I want to know why is Chairperson Baker, so passionate, or why is Commissioner Faulkner so passionate? Even as a commission, trying to establish our own connection is essential in our team development and how we engage our public as well. So I think there is some work to be done there, and you've all hit it on the head. We just need to get to that space. So this is an exciting night to be able to have this conversation and really feel like we are moving forward with why, right? That's our own individual why. I think collectively are all very similar, but coming from very different places. So it is an exciting night. So those would be my thoughts in terms of safe space, healing, and building those connections, not just within our own commission here, but also with our public as well. And for lack of a better phrase, an icebreaker.
And can we use the commission meetings to do something here? We have a captive audience. We record every month. What can we do through this commission to educate, to bring healing, to bring people closer together? I would like to explore that question. Commissioner Wartha.
Thank you. To your point, yes, and that would be a great question for Director Joel. Like, can we incorporate maybe a recorded message from a particular group, or for example, like Cesar Chavez Day just passed, could we have incorporated a brief video or a message just about Cesar Chavez and what he stood for, Women's History Month, just something like that into our meetings? I think that would be great as well. I think it goes along the lines of what you're saying. But also, even if we have groups like the NLC, the National League of Cities, give a message to the community, or just something, incorporating something like that periodically, I think would be awesome. But I totally agree with what you all are saying. I'm more in alignment with the smaller groups versus a big open 100-person town hall. I've said from the beginning, I'm really for listening sessions and small focus groups, and like you said, I think having a topic or a theme so we're not all over the place, but maybe even having another community member with us, or one of the electeds, or somebody from NLC or a professional with us to kind of help us guide the conversation and facilitate, at least at the beginning, I think would be great. I'm totally in agreement with like the coffees at the park. I know council had mentioned having coffee with the PD and residents, and maybe having one or two of us or a couple of us can listen in on some of those sessions as well. I like the idea about the Friendship Park, definitely being a safe space, but I would also like to explore the idea of locations in all the districts, just because some individuals might not have access to one area of the city. So I would like to incorporate different meeting areas to make sure that we hit all the different districts. And also, as mentioned before, Cesar Chavez Day just passed. We had Martin Luther King Jr. Day in January. Those are both days of service. So I would like to incorporate, maybe after COVID, having a volunteer day where we can engage with the community and do some kind of volunteer work out there. That's another opportunity for us to engage with our residents. I could probably go on and on too, but I mean, even in COVID conditions, there's an opportunity for the city or for us or a particular department, maybe community services, to put on webinars to honor Women's History Month, honor Black History Month, honor Cesar Chavez Day, honor all these different things, or domestic violence, all these different or anti-domestic violence, but honor these types of events. And I've also mentioned before, which maybe this is a conversation for later, is implementing proclamations and reaffirming anti-racist resolutions, just so it's in a public forum and the community is aware of where the city and where we stand. I know we just, the hate crimes just took place against the Asians, and I know there's a couple of cities that have already moved forward in implementing resolutions in their city to stand against those types of hate crimes. And I know Temecula did one last year as well. Yes, but I don't know if we should reaffirm it. That's just one of my recommendations. I don't know how the commissioners feel about that, but I think it would be good to bring back periodically just to reaffirm, since this is still an ongoing issue in our country. Yeah, I probably have more, but I'm in alignment with these ideas.
No, this is great. This is what we wanted, is just to go ahead and just get all of your guys' ideas out. And then, like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, council will be approving a full-on community engagement plan. But I could see several pieces of this. There are themes in everything you guys are saying. There are some connection themes there. So yes, and even Imelda, your comments about reaffirming, those will be passed along as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Faulkner?
Okay, I think Denise had something as well after me, so I'll go. I agree with everything everyone said. What are some things I just jotted down? I mean, as we were talking about, establishing work groups, focus groups, targeting specific demographics would be good. We have a very diverse group of commissioners on this panel, part of this REDI commission. They have specific areas they can touch. I know Ivy, you're very young, and maybe you have a better ability to touch some of our youth in the city, who will probably be more willing to talk to you and be open to you. And in Crystal, you have a passion about handicap and special needs. So we have an opportunity. My thing, just thinking outside the box and splitting up some of these categories, being able to go focus on those specific areas and bring it back. Another thing I'm thinking about. Yes.
Can I ask you a question so I can make sure you understand? Are you saying that you are recommending that we maybe focus on our area of expertise and be able to share out on the commission? Is
Correct.
that
Correct.
yes.
Yeah. Breaking up the demographics across the Temecula, splitting it up between all the commissioners, go out and focus on those groups and bring it back to share that information and compare the data. So that was one area I was looking at. Thank you, Madam Chair, for focusing my efforts. I appreciate that. And then another would be connecting with a city council member and going out to the community as a united front, as they speak on from their political position as city leadership, that we're there to actually reinforce that and specifically talk about what we're doing from the REDI piece, because that probably will be an interest of theirs as well. So we can kill two birds with one stone. While they're speaking about that, we can speak to the group about what our focus is, because some still don't have an true understanding, because I think everybody focuses in on race,
right?
Want to stay right there, and they don't go into equity, diversity, inclusion. So going out with them. I also thought about even a three-headed monster, going out with city council, us, and law enforcement, because it's always a contentious effort, right? To be in line with one another, to be able to talk about specific issues, and to be there to hear what people have to say, and have thick skin. I'm a guy, I was in the military for a while, so there's not an environment that I go in and I'm not comfortable in. It doesn't matter if it's contentious, it doesn't matter if it's going to get uncomfortable, it doesn't matter if somebody is in a position to attack or discredit. I feel comfortable in that environment, so I have no problem sitting there having that discussion and making sure that there's an understanding there. So I would say that out front, and I'm just speaking for Commissioner Falk. And last but not least, I agree with what Madam Chair was talking about. And I understand Director Joel about the Brown Act. I know there's a lot of things that we can't do, but this really is a unique board that needs some flexibility to be able to create relationships, one with one another, and get on the same sheet of music. And I understand it's hard to, two can't be in the same area. We can't seem that we're discussing city business And I totally understand it. And I've been I think all of us have been compliant with that. But man, it's really hard. It's really hard to establish relationships with one another and then to go out to do the work, so, and really understanding where each one, I can read resumes, I can read bios, but that gives me nothing about body language, mannerisms, and then getting a detailed understanding from having us sit in a room and having a conversation without swaying each other's opinion, right? That's what you're there, Director Joel. You're going to make sure we don't do that. But at least being able to just build relationships with one another. So I concur with what's been said about that as well. And with that being said, I'm zipping it up. Done.
Commissioner Faulkner, I appreciate those comments. And I know some of you all already know each other and connect in different ways through the chamber or the realtors group or whatever. So there are some that already have those relationships outside. But there is nothing that is stopping you from connecting with one another individually as you wish. The limitations of the Brown Act are purely group settings, right? And consensus building outside of a public meeting, as our city attorney mentioned. So you all have each other's contact information. As COVID restrictions are lifted, you all can be meeting for coffee. You can be doing, just don't, as I have Commissioner Wilson on my screen here. As long as Commissioner Wilson isn't like, oh, Commissioner Pastorian, let's have coffee. And then they decide something and the Commissioner Pastorian says, Commissioner Faulkner, I had coffee with Commissioner Wilson and she said X, this. And then you're like, hey, Commissioner Huerta, let's have coffee. As long as those things aren't happening, you guys are free to connect with one another. It's group connection at one time that is really the Brown Act restriction.
Got it. Thank you.
And then with the Brown Act, just to clarify, how many of us on here? 7. And so even you can't have a majority of any commission. That's the specifics of it. So if it's 7 of us, 4 of us can't be together at one time. Those are the nuances that we need to be able to talk about and understand. I just think I'm just big on understanding. I'm big on education. Let's learn what we can do, should do, so we can do. Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, I like all of that. Thank you so much for sharing all that, because we need to hear that. Because I know on Facebook, I think a couple of us are Facebook friends, and they may post some type of devotion and inspiration, and I want to like it. I'm thinking, I can't like it. So I just look at it and say, that's a good inspiration. It just made my day. So,
yeah.
So I love the no judgment zone. And I know I've shared this before. You have to meet people where they are. You can't be superior. You can't feel that, you're wrong and I'm always right. You have to meet them where they are. And that's why I love introducing, we're in a no judgment zone. We're in a no hate zone. You have nothing but love right here. And when you come to people like that, their defenses they're not up, and they're able to hear from you and able to receive. So what I just would like to share, you guys all have great input. I'm telling you, once this COVID is over and we're free to go out into Temecula, we're going to be a dynamic force to deal with, because we have so much passion about the REDI Commission. But I would like to see more intimate conversations. And I talk with some of the city council. I would like us to start going to different HOAs, homeowners association. That's where you're going to get a group of the communities and the neighborhood. Let's take a commissioner with a city council member and let's sit and let's listen. Let's share with them what the REDI Commission is and why it was created. I like the idea of coffee, tea, and we is the community. And this is going to be something small, maybe 15, 20 people, but we're just sitting there having coffee and we're shooting the breeze. We are sharing each other a dialogue back and forth. What do you see the commission? What are you looking to get out of the REDI Commission? How can we help? What are you seeing in our community that we need to pay attention to? Everything is not perfect. We have a great city that we live in, but there are some areas where people want to be heard, and we want to be that listening ear. Yeah, I like the idea of educating people. They need to be educated. A lot of people don't know. And what they don't know, they assume, is correct. And we just want to be able to educate. The more you educate people, the more they have the knowledge and the training to do better, to live better, and then they can train their family and their friends on what is truly the facts. And then something else I had, I like to be prepared for negative energy. Everyone's not going to be like, oh, great, I love that. Some people are going to push back, and you have to be okay with that. If you're truly coming from a place of love and no judgment zone, you need to hear people out. And we want to hear. Some things may have happened generations to generation. You need to listen to them to know why they feel that way. And then you can share, and who knows, you may develop a friend after that. And that's what we really want to be. I thought it would be a great idea to have have a speaker, actually the author of one of the books that we're talking about doing in our book club. Maybe have them come and just share why they wrote this book, what were some of the things that you were dealing with, and then they could ask the questions to the author of the book and really get the behind the scenes of why the book was written. And then my last thing is, I love the part that I think it was Commissioner Ivy that says some things come with social and emotional at an emotional cost. And I love that. And that is so true. And then the last thing is, I want us to just partner up with other organizations in our city, because a lot of organizations are starting to embrace the inclusive racial diversity and all that. Why not partner up with them? And then we can just be a stronger and a louder voice. And I've been talking with our Realtors Association. We can partner up. We're 5,000 strong. So we can definitely benefit from each other and learn from each other. So that completes my report.
And I'd like to ask, can we bring prayer to this REDI Commission? Can we do an invocation here? Because you're gonna need whatever faith you have to sustain you and me through this. And this is very important work here. So I would ask if we can bring invocation to our work.
Yeah, Chair Baker, if that's the will of the commission, it's that is, invocations are already a part of city council meetings. Under law, we're allowed to have them. We can easily share. There are restrictions on what can and cannot be said and all of that kind of good stuff, just based on Supreme Court law and stuff like that. But we can easily share that policy and have invocations at our meeting. Easy to do. Now, not necessarily easy to find people to do it. We have challenges. I know Erica's like, wait a minute. We have challenges even for our city council meetings, but if this group wants to rotate, if this group wants to give the invocation, that's easy, low hanging fruit, we can start that next agenda. If you want us to go out and find people to do it, that's a little bit different. Okay, so what I'm hearing,
I think whoever's interested here, and the reason why I say that is just because it's just so much pressure, and it's a lot of, we just need our faith. And I appreciate, first of all, that my city council prays. I believe in that. I want to follow my city council in that. It's important because people are hurting. This subject matter is painful. And some things are not going to come by teaching. It has to be a spiritual practice. I was a chaplain from 2002 to 2014. And regardless to what individuals' faiths were, if they had a faith or a religious belief, they were more likely to leave the hospital than those that didn't. And so to just be inclusive there, because I think religion is a space that we need to be more inclusive as well. Because how do some of us get through these very hard conversations? You got to say a prayer before you go, and before you come. So I know she wants a consensus. So is anyone agreeable to having the invocation at our meetings. I don't know if you're interested in that. If you are, maybe a thumbs up, a nod head, or thumbs down. So I see your thumbs up. I see your thumbs up, 2, 3 thumbs up.
Do we need to vote on it, or do we just?
No, just general consensus. I see that. And you know what, I am mindful, just like we are at the council level, that there are folks of different faiths and there are folks of no faith. And we are absolutely mindful of that. So, you know, we can incorporate a moment of silence from time to time. We can incorporate, you know, we can even incorporate study in that, right? Like we can even go ahead and research. Eric, I'm going to put this on you, so I'm so sorry, but you know, Erica can easily send out a prayer from a different faith to the chair and the vice chair and the logistics, in case you guys want to, you know, make reference to that, or whatever it might be. If you guys give us, kind of your general desires on that, we can definitely make that happen.
Well, mine was simply just to follow the city council. You know, whoever's interested. I don't want poor Erica to go and have to do research. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to really, for me personally, like for example, I would have said, can we have a moment of silence? As the chair, I would have said, can we have a moment of silence for for our Asian Americans, the Pacific Islanders, for Mr. Floyd's family, Mr. Chauvin's family, because people are hurting. We had people killed in our community here. A gunman went in and killed up a whole family. So I'm very, and this is what I mean about bringing myself to the space. I'm very sensitive to what's happening with the people in my community. So although we're in this space, to me, to be inclusive is to be mindful of the people's pain. And to just say, we acknowledge you. Can we have a moment of silence? We stand with you. We stand to the point of the proclamation, but this commission, you know, we stand against Asian hate. You know, people don't deserve to be hurt. And so those are some things that I think we should just draw boundaries through humanity. And how does that humanity come? Through just a moment of silence or a prayer or acknowledging, I just see your pain and I'm sorry that you're hurting. So that's my intention for the question, more so than anything, or the request more so than anything. Commissioner Harris.
If I could just speak, because I think that I was the only one who didn't put my thumbs up. And I just wanted to say that I'm in complete support of what you're trying to do and bringing attention to the heaviness of what is happening in our country. And that kind of informed a little bit of what I was saying just about kind of the social burden, not just of being, you know, in the commission, not just that, but just, you know, depending on your background, there's so much going on constantly. And it can be very hard. And then to go and work in a space in which you challenge what's going on with our society and actively trying to make it better, it's hard. And sometimes I have to pray. And sometimes I call my friends and say, just pray for me, just for several reasons. But just as you spoke about the importance of bringing yourself to this space, which I love the idea of everyone bringing themselves to this space. I also want this to be a space for people who are watching this commission to also feel like they could completely bring themselves in it. My fear is that putting a particular religion will make people feel excluded in a space that was particularly created to be inclusive of absolutely everyone. So that's just my reluctance. I want others to feel comfortable being in this space with us. I want them to feel that they are part of the dialogue, although we're in a Zoom call, and get to know us and really feel connected. And I just don't want any reason for them not to. So,
Well, I would like to address that though. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to disengage. You know, that's a part of the problem with being inclusive, is that what do you include? Who do you include? Do you include what matters to the people sitting at the table? If we do demographics, even from a religious standpoint, what is the religious demographic of the city? And I asked that question because when I was a chaplain, we had, to your point, Commissioner Harris, we had, I don't know what the demographic is now, so don't quote me, okay? But at that time, this was mostly, Riverside County was mostly a Christian on the census, right? They were mostly Christian. And I was tasked with, one day someone came to the hospital and we didn't have their particular faith represented, right? And they wanted to be a chaplain. And the short version of that is that I was faced with the very question that you're saying right now. How do I let those individuals feel included when there's not a majority of the population of our patients that are their particular faith, right? And what I ended up doing was creating a liaison program. So our everyday chaplains that we called upon, those were the main demographic. And at that time, it was Catholics and Protestants. Those were the two major religions of this area. And I went to each faith that I knew at that time, because I was the head chaplain. And I went and I learned, to Randy's point, I learned about their faith. I made sure that I had a representative that was available if they needed spiritual services that I can call, because it was important to have their faith represented in their well-being. And so I think in our efforts to include, we have to make sure that we're remaining inclusive. And faith is a big part of people's lives here. Faith is just a big part. So that would be my last thought about it. Go ahead, Commissioner Faulkner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Harris. And I'm a man of faith, a man of prayer as well. I pray over the commission all the time before our meetings and afterwards, over the city and over my friends, and on a constant basis. But from my perspective, is if we're looking at an environment that is inclusive, I try to meet middle ground here. And I say we have a moment of silence, and those who are going to pray in silence over the thing, and those who are going to do and represent their faith, or just take a moment of silence. They take a moment of silence, but in that silence, during that time of silence, we can be praying in our own prayers. Have a time frame, 2 minutes or whatever that is, and we all pray. And we remain silent if you want to remain silent, and then we come back together. I'm just trying to meet middle ground where it stays inclusive, where someone doesn't feel like one faith is stronger in theirs than the others. Right. Because when we look at demographics, and what we were formed to do, I think that is another thing we cannot miss out on, is the fact that there are different religions and people look at things differently, and we want to be inclusive and make them feel that way. So to keep it at a point where we can have our moment of prayer and have our moment of silence, or if you have a different religion, you can have that moment to worship or pray in that moment, how you pray, and then we come back together. So it's just a recommendation just for me. I just want to add that in there as well.
And just so I'm clear, I just want us to acknowledge the people paying. That's all. Just so, because if you had a prayer service with me, we would have some real prayer. So what I'm proposing up here on this council, honey, is just simply, can we acknowledge that there's a higher power and that we need some help and that people are hurting? And can we just say, can we help you? Help us. Can we help us? That's it. That's it. I'm not offering you my prayer service because it wouldn't be appropriate for this setting, because I go in for Jesus, but everybody don't. Everybody don't. And I'm okay with that. That's why I was able to successfully be a head chaplain for a number of years in a very diverse community. So I'm very much aware of that. Okay. Okay, Randy, you ready for your next question for us?
So I just want to be clear in the direction that I am getting to make sure that I have not missed anything. We will add on the agendas a moment of silence. And in that moment of silence, whoever chooses to do whatever it is that they want to do can go ahead and do that. That is, are we good? Is that where, I think that's where I saw everybody. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Awesome.
And the only thing that I want to do as the chair is the same thing. Just say, can we have a moment of silence and maybe acknowledge the current events of pain? Because that's what I'm really trying to get to. I don't want the prayer to overshadow the people's pain of what I'm really trying to acknowledge here, because people are hurting. Diverse people are hurting. They're being hurt, and we're the REDI Commission. Can we give them a nod? Can we let them know we see you, we're with you, and we wish you well? That's all. I don't want to lose that part of why I'm asking for the prayer. I'm not just asking to pray.
So my understanding, and I think that this is a larger question, is how can we create a space to acknowledge some of the things that touch upon the REDI, Commission principles that are happening in our country, creating a space to acknowledge what's going on, and a time to acknowledge it. Because I know that you sent something out about commissioner notes and it only being a time to really address opportunities for citizens in the community to engage, but actually creating a time where we can speak broadly and frankly about some of the situations that are happening across the country. For example, within the Asian community, and the increase of hate crime by, I believe it's 1900%. That's abhorrent. Being able to speak on their pain, right. That's extremely important, but really finding a time, not only to acknowledge, but to educate. This has been going on for a real long time, since January. And I think just for me, I would have loved, because it'd been sitting on my mind for a long time, to have felt like there was a space to talk about it. But as we move forward, making that kind of a priority as well.
Yes, Commissioner Harris, that's what I'm trying to get at. I just feel so bad. Like all of this stuff is happening and we're not saying anything. We're not acknowledging it. So that's exactly what I'm saying. So that was my simple way of acknowledging it, of saying, how can we acknowledge it? Can we have a prayer? Can we have a moment of silence? But that's the heart. You're picking up my heart. My heart has just been so heavy for the community. Like people are hurting. Can we acknowledge them? So to that point, even if you guys don't want to have a moment of silence, I would want to open up ideas to what she's saying, because how do we acknowledge the pain and the things that's happening in our country, as she said, on a broader scale as the REDI Commission? How do we do that? My suggestion was a moment of silence to acknowledge it, or a prayer, right? But there's plenty of other ways. What other ways do you have, Commissioner Wartha?
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with a moment of silence or prayer, because I think it is important for us to acknowledge what's going on. But that goes along with kind of what I brought up earlier regarding the proclamations and resolutions, reaffirming our stance as a city and as a commission. But to Commissioner Harris's point, it also goes along kind of what we talked about, bringing in some of these educational parts to our meetings, or some kind of presentations as part of the meetings. I think that'll be a good approach as well. And so I don't know if that needs to be agendized, Director Joel, if that's something we need to come back to discuss as a formal discussion item, or.
No, I think we have general consensus that we can even put on the agenda. We can do moment of silence / acknowledgements. And then that is really that time for, if there is just something that's super heavy on someone's heart that they want to go ahead and address, they can go ahead and do that. I absolutely see, Chair Baker, your intention here with the acknowledgement of and not have silence on these heavy things that are directly related to REDI. So I will go ahead and make sure that, or Erica will make sure that on the agenda, at the appropriate place where we traditionally have invocations for City Council, Erica, let's make sure we have moment of silence / acknowledgements. Thank you. This discussion has been fantastic. Thank you. So now on to the second question. And actually, Commissioner Wilson started to almost get into it there a little bit with the realtor comment. So the second question is, you know, we know other people are working in this space, and we want to leverage all of the resources and the work, the good work that's happening in our community. So who, you know, are we thinking of from a stakeholder perspective that you would like to see us partner with and hear presentations from, but really, and not only who, but why too, because I think that's helpful in addressing things. For example, you saw on that list, Temecula Valley Unified School District. That one was a no-brainer for us because a lot of the comments that we heard last year was directly related to things that happened through the school district, right? So to making sure that our kids in our community, there's that linkage between the school district and the city in this space, that one was easy. But who are we not thinking of? Who are we missing? So Chair Baker, if you can facilitate that discussion, that'd be great.
I see that list again.
Oh, yes. Let me go ahead and.
And Commissioner Wilson, I see you're unmuted, so just jump right on in.
Well, yeah, I was looking at the list. I think the chamber is on there. The Realtor Association. We need to add that one. Let me see. I think we should partner with some of our homeowners association.
Well, what will we be partnering with them for? Let me be clear that I'm understanding.
So we
no, not you. I'm just trying to, I want to answer her question so I can make sure. No, I'm not asking you. I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying, do we want to like have joint meetings, or are you saying we want to ask them to participate? I just want to understand what are we, so when I give you a recommendation or I'm hearing these recommendations, I can understand what are we asking them to do?
Yeah, so what we know is that some folks in our community, some organizations like the school district are starting to do things in the REDI space to help community members, where we want to make sure that we know and understand what they are doing and what services they are providing or how they're going to be engaging in the REDI space so that we're not duplicating efforts and we're serving the same community, the same people. And then if there is something, for example, if they want to put together some sort of a REDI program for kids through the school district, the city might be able to pitch in for that as well, right? Like, and put resources and things like that. But like the Chamber of Commerce comes to mind. The Chamber of Commerce is doing, they have their own REDI initiative to engage their businesses in the REDI space. So that's going to be really important for us to know. So if they end up doing some sort of like sticker program in Old Town, or, you know, like, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're engaging their minority businesses, their women-owned businesses. That's our community too. So what can we do to make sure that we're pushing successfully their programs as well, and partnering, and that conversation is happening. So the whole community is aware of what is happening in this space collectively. I hope that makes sense.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson, I cut you off and I apologize. I just was so lost. I'm like, well, what do we want them to do? Thank you. I'm so apologize. I'm sleepy. Go ahead, Commissioner Wilson. And then
no, that's that. Oh, go ahead. No, that's fine, because that's what I was going to say with some of our homeowners association. You got to know they have boards, so they meet and they put bylaws and they put out policies and procedures for the people in their community, so we can engage with them to see what they're doing. We can come and speak at their homeowners association meeting, and then we can just gather information. The same with the Realtors Association. we have just formed a diversity housing committee, and that's something, we're just starting it off. So it's very new, but we can engage and do some things together, whether it be training or webinars or getting the word out. We could piggyback just so that we're not reinventing the wheel, but we're all sharing it on the same page. So that's what I like.
Yes. Commissioner Steve.
Yeah, in regards to the chamber, they have developed some guiding principles to work within the REDI mission. So their guiding principles of the chamber are ways they're going to be inclusive, ways they're going to address certain issues. If we go to the Rotary, the local Rotary group, well, several Rotary groups here that we have, the Kiwanis Club, the schools, like all the different organizations, the HOAs, and say to them, are you interested in being part of this movement? And if you are, what kind of principles do you want to have to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all kind of following the same kind of rule book and we all have the same mission? Because we're going to do what we're going to do in this pocket, and then the Realtor Association is going to do what they're going to do in their pocket, and then the chamber is going to do what they're going to do. But if we all have the similar guidelines or ideas, then all of a sudden all of it is community wide, and we're really encompassing each other's things, and it's not just our commission, it is the whole community that is getting involved. So if we have a kind of a dialogue with each different group that we can reach out to, or if they contact us and say, this is what our mission is, or these are what our guidelines are you interested in adopting those, or are you interested in doing some work within this space? I think that would be a great place for us to start and see what they're willing to do.
I think that's great, Commissioner Steve. Yes. Commissioner Wartha.
I think we should also include any veterans groups. I know Temecula has a big military community, but also make sure we include any senior groups or youth groups. And of course, there's like tons of nonprofits as well. So I'm not sure if it's.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. Maybe I'm not being clear in what I'm asking for. So we know that the idea is there are already people out there that are doing work. So this isn't to like generate new work. This is the folks that are out there that are already doing this work. How do we collaborate with the work that they are doing to make sure that we are not duplicating efforts? MSJC is a great example of this. The young people at MSJC is engaging in a full-on REDI initiative for their students. A lot of those students live here, right? A lot of those folks live, work, and play in Temecula. Some don't, but how do we capitalize? How do we make sure that their efforts are joining with ours? So, and when you get larger community stakeholder groups like that together, there's just a lot of, there's more availability for resources. Commissioner Wilson, you mentioned, bringing in book authors, right? Like that's something we can go through MSJC for, right? That's where I would be tapping that kind of resource accessibility. Commissioner Huerta, you mentioned, messaging, the Realtors group, and they've made some statements on historical redlining and things like that. A little video clip on that, right? Like these are things. So we're kind of looking at who is already in this space that we're missing.
And we're looking at specifically like Temecula based or regional based, correct?
Yeah, because we're trying to serve our community, right? Our population. Yeah. So Pechanga is already on there.
Oh, sorry, my hand. So since you mentioned MSJC, we'll possibly Cal State San Marcos too. Yeah.
Commissioner Pastorian.
Thank you. I was perfect. I was going to actually say the same thing with San Marcos as well, since they are here, but also potentially any of our vocational affiliates that we might have within the city would also be something that perhaps we should be looking at as well. and kind of an extension of that, and this could be a little bit outside, but you know, Director Joel will bring me in. So what about Inland Regional Center? We have affiliates here as they service our special needs communities, but it might be something that perhaps that we can look at as well, partnering with and collaborating with Inland Regional.
Okay, Commissioner Worthy, your hand up again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I
No,
don't
no,
remember.
no. I just want to make sure. I looked down. I looked down, and I was like, "Is
Like,
this the
what's going
same?"
on?
Yes. No. Keep on. Speak.
Okay.
This is just giving me life. Yes.
Okay, awesome. I don't remember the list, but was the hospital on there? Medical groups?
You know what? I don't know if it was either, but I'll make sure that the hospital is, okay, we'll
Okay.
I
definitely.
think TVH is on there.
Oh, it is? Okay, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think TVH is on there.
Okay. That's good.
Commissioner Harris.
Sorry, I just want to say that Palomar actually does have a very active anti-racism at Palomar program, different groups, educators for anti-racism. I know that my cousin who lives in Temecula is an instructor there who is on the board, and they're doing some amazing work. I see here they have diversity, equity, and inclusion work on their front main page. So they would be really great institution to link with, particularly because there's a lot of people from Temecula who attend that school.
And how about Abbott? You know, there is Abbott involved. They're our major contributor to a lot of the efforts that are here in Temecula. And then, of course, Southwest healthcare system as a whole. That would include the healthcare system of Temecula Valley. Are they a part of? I know when they were established, and are they a part of Southwest healthcare system, or did they stand alone? Because I know Inland and Rancho and Corona are Southwest healthcare, only because I was a chaplain of those, and I retired by the time we built the one in Temecula. Yes, Commissioner Steve, you have that answer for me?
They're under one umbrella, United Healthcare Services. I believe I might have that wrong, but they're under one umbrella, but they're not directly connected.
Okay.
Yeah, they're under UHS.
That's what it is.
Mhm.
Well, we can certainly check in with both of those. And Chair Baker, you make a great point on Abbott, because that's a Abbott does a lot in the community, and so there might be opportunity there, and they might even be doing some equity work internally as well. So we'll definitely check in with them as well.
Even our local utilities, though, I know even the gas company, they are doing major work in the REDI space, just doing great things. So to have Adam Evantoff on here, that he does PR for them, he's a great resource and very, very involved. And I get emails and they are constantly doing stuff within the space. So they're on top of it.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely reach out to, I know Adam at the gas company, and then we'll reach out to his counterpart at SCE as well, because I know they're doing equity work as well.
And are we partnering with our police department? We did say we're doing that.
Yeah, so RSO is, we just treat that as an internal versus an external, since we're under contract with them.
Okay.
I just wanted to reiterate what Commissioner Steed said in terms of the messaging being consistent, and having that level of consistency with all of these various people working in this space, certainly within our community, and the ones that you listed before. It's just so important that we're all, on the same page and delivering that same message, in terms of unity. So having some type of meeting and presentations, I think you have that already lined up, Randy, but, but even externally outside of that, would be hearing some of those things or seeing it, in action and its practicality would be great too. So.
Absolutely.
All hearts clear. Commissioner Faulkner, go for it.
Be quick. I agree with everybody said. I guess we're looking at I'm just looking at these in groups. I know we had Rancho. I think on that list, Rancho Church was on there. I would just say faith-based organizations that group everybody in one loop and get someone across who could speak about that to us as well. Because we want to make that, I just look at things from an inclusive standpoint. So we want to make sure we look at the faith-based organizations overall. Like that we have the education system, someone from the education, college education to speak to us on that and what they're doing in the diversity space. I know we had TBUS, Temecula Valley. I'd like to see maybe someone from EDD, someone from the employment space to talk to us about the dynamics and demographics with employment in Temecula, to be able to grab that data and show and be able to speak to that. And also, is there a way to get someone small business administration to give us a conversation as well in regards to what they're doing for diversity and open up opportunities for all demographics, people of color, and things like that as well. I think that was it for me. That's all I have for that.
I know the SBDC is working on the REDI program. I know that they're working, they have some things in the works, so they would definitely fill that business gap there.
Yeah, and we can go through Emily on that too, with the chamber, because she's pretty dialed in on that as well. So we can definitely go there. Commissioner Faulkner, you just reminded me, Camp Pendleton, my neighbor.
Yeah.
I hear their practice runs going off all the time.
Yeah, we have a huge military community here, active duty, so it'll be great to have someone here from them to be able to speak to that, because that's a huge subset of people that live here, a lot of retirees and a lot of active duty.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have partnered with Camp Pendleton on other related like infrastructure projects and things like that. So
awesome.
Commissioner Pastorian.
Thank you. You're awesome. I just actually had a quick question, I guess, and perhaps a suggestion. And I don't know the answer. Perhaps you do, or anybody on the panel here. Is the wineries part of that chamber, or do their winery growers association stand alone? And if they do, is that somebody who we want to as well reach out to, because they are a large piece of our community?
They're both. Many of them are part of the chamber, but they also have Visit Temecula, which most of them are members of. So I think we can definitely work with Visit Temecula too, and that's another chapter of part of our community. So that would be good.
Yeah, we can reach out to them. I don't know that they're doing work in this space, that they're actively doing work in this space, but it's definitely worth an inquiry.
And if we go back to the subject of housing, Habitat does a lot, obviously, in this space. It's what they do. So we can definitely engage them. Tammy's wonderful, and she'll be happy to, give us any information that we need. That book, The Color of Law, which you recommended, and was absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it, it is an absolutely 100% must read. It blew my mind, and it was disgusting in so many ways, but I'm so fortunate that I got the opportunity to read it. But I talked to Tammy about that book, and she actually met the author a few years ago. He spoke at a Habitat conference. So it really is the nuts and bolts of everything Habitat stands for. So really, really good synergy there.
And to Commissioner Faulkner about including faith, is there just a basic interfaith council here?
Yes.
Because that'll be, there you are right there.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Commissioner Wartha.
I just wanted to add, since Commissioner Faulkner and Director Joel brought up Camp Pendleton, we also have a lot of residents that serve at March Air Force Base. So it might be, I would recommend reaching out to them as well.
Yeah, we'll reach out to all these folks and see who's actually doing equity work. Because they all cover all of our community. But once we understand who's doing equity work, then we'll be able to start to align the mission. That's quite a list, commissioners. This is exactly why we needed this. Chair Baker, that was the end of my request for recommendations. So
okay, well, this is the part that I love. I just need you all to know I love this part. I feel like we're really doing the work here. So thank you all. Okay, so then we should go to our commission reports. Who wants to share a report? See, Randy, you sent that email. Now they all afraid.
So I'll go
Ain't nobody
first.
scared. Oh, wait.
No.
Okay.
I'm not either though, because I'm
No, I will go first, and it'll
me.
be short and sweet. So everybody knows that this month is Fair Housing Month. And for those that don't know, that's in April 11, 1968, when the Fair Housing Initiative was signed in place because there were some things that were going on. Some people were being discriminated for housing. So of course, I've been going to webinars, Zooms, and all that other good stuff this month. But what I want to take you guys to take away from this is we have to educate ourselves. And that's why I have my book here, The Color of Law. I think you can probably see it, my screen. Yeah, there it is. But I just wanted to, I wanted to just to give you guys some tools, because I believe if we educate people, then we can conversate with people, because we have a little bit more intelligence about what the situation is. So I just want people to get that book, The Color of Law. Robert Rovenstein, he actually wrote this book. And this book right here, basically, it gives us the history of what actually happened. So if you have no clue, or you're like, none of that's happening now, then go back to the history and find out exactly what happened. You'll be surprised. Another good book is Race for Profit. That is another book you might want to write down, Race for Profit. And that book basically, it talks about the real estate industry, how the government and how the National Association of Realtors, all of those were involved in the segregation and keeping Black homeownership from non-existence, basically not letting it happen. And then the last thing, there's YouTube videos. You guys can Google anything on YouTube and it'll take you to different events. But there's this one video, and it's called grabthekey.com, and it's just 3 words, grabthekey.com, and it's going to take you step by step on everything that happened. And then the National Association of Realtors have a video. It's a YouTube video, and it's called, it gives you an overview of the history of fair housing. If you go to the NAR website, nar.org, and look for a fair housing video, it's going to give you a quick history of everything that happened. So this is just to educate you on what's going on so that we don't make the same mistakes that were made in the past. It talks about redlining and all of that. So just be educated. And that's what I want to leave with you guys tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. I appreciate you. Commissioner Wartha?
I'll be quick, I promise. Of course, I attended a ton of webinars too and trainings, and I just want to thank the commissioners for sending out, giving us a heads up when upcoming trainings or webinars are happening. I super appreciate all of them, and especially the ones on the racial homeownership disparities. That's a lot to learn, and so some good information and historical background. I like the Center Against Racism and Trauma, the Anti-Racism Summit, and I believe they're having another one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure some of you know. I think it's April 16th. So there's another one coming up. But I also wanted to note that on icma.org, there is the Asian American Experience in Local Government webinar on April 12th, and it's free for members and non-members. I sent the link to Director Joel. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. And also wanted to note that I was looking at some proposed legislation. There's been a bunch of bills that have been introduced, and there was 2 that I just wanted to speak briefly about. One was AB 886, and these are in direct response to the hate crimes against Asian Americans. But AB 886 would create a grant program through the Department of Justice to provide grants to community-based organizations for the implementation and operation of restorative justice programs that are focused on hate crime offenses. Additionally, it addresses the victim's needs and provides the individual who caused the harm with tools not to recidivate. And it also expands, increases funding for culturally competent and mental health services for victims, and expands access for victims of hate violence to services needed to recover from their trauma. And another one I wanted to note to the group is AB 266, and that bill would define felony hate crimes as a violent felony. So I have my eye on those. They were introduced as a state legislation, so I'll keep an eye out and come back as I hear more on those two bills. I think that's all I have. I attended this awesome Women's History Month webinar through WRCOG. I think that was on March 26th. I'm trying to get a copy of that webinar. It wasn't open to everyone, but I'm trying to get a copy of it to share. It did have 3 local elected officials, women elected officials that were the panelists. So if I can get a hold of it, I'll make sure to share it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wortha.
Mhm.
Commissioner Faulkner, I know you were ready. You said you wasn't scared, so sorry I didn't get a chance to let you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair Baker. I appreciate it. I'll be quick as well. I've been out of the, I've been jumping at the vent, trying to get out in the community. I know we're still in COVID, we're coming out. But I took an opportunity to have a conversation with Toward Maximum Independence Inc., one of their executives. And they work on innovative and trusted services for children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities such as autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, deaf, and hard of hearing. They work on employment, community living, family support services, and they also help with disabled veterans to help them get employment services. Had a great conversation with them, and around race, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it was a really good conversation, about 30 minutes. And ending that conversation, I asked them, okay, what is a top priority for these customers that you service? When you talk to them in the city of Temecula, do they feel like they're included and things are equitable for them? In addition to that, do they feel like they belong here? And the top priority for them, Randy, and maybe we take this back, is transportation. He said the number one concern, they do well getting people employed. They do well with education. But the number one priority for them, and based on his clientele and what they see from the people the customers they serve, is transportation. So that's something we need to probably look at for that community, because that's what was brought up. So that was a great conversation. Just trying to get out in the community and then just try to feel out what we have here before we get started with we're going to external now. Another conversation I had with I found out from one of my church members that Marietta Valley Unified School District has hired a full-time coordinator of equity, diversity, and inclusion. I had a chance to talk to her, and I've got her permission to use her name, Tamara Dewey. She's working full-time. This has been a 5-year campaign to get educators and administrators trained in equity, inclusion, and diversity. And they're taking steps to get their teachers trained in it. They're having conversations across the school district. So I just really wanted to dig into it because her title really aligns with us. And I just really don't know, when I look on Temecula Valley Unified School District trying to find something similar, I just couldn't do it. And that's the reason I really wanted to talk to her about what they're doing there and how they're working in this space. And it's been a 5-year process for them. They've already started working in this space. So it was good having a conversation. She's a young, enthusiastic, motivated young lady who's driven, who's passionate about what she does. And man, she's making an impact. So hopefully, as we have these external conversations, we will start to see some of this play out in our city. And I shared with her about the REDI Commission, and she was all enthusiastic about it. And wow, Temecula has jumped out where other cities wouldn't. I'm at a small level in the school district, and you guys are at the city level. And you're making a difference, which hopefully will impact the school district as well. So I just shared that 2 great conversations. with community motivators out there doing things for citizens. I know one is in another city, but I just wanted to see what she was doing. But toward Maximum Independence Inc. is doing some good jobs, and I know they're not the only one in this space doing that. It's not. They're just the one I reached out to just to get some feedback from them. So I just wanted to bring that up. Some great conversations, and with that being said, Cip, I'm done.
Thank you. I'll let whoever wants to share next, but I just want to say I need to give a shout out to Temecula School District. You know, they're in this work as well. They've been here for 3 years in this work. They just have a different format, but I personally work with them. Me, Tiffany, I work with them on several areas in this area of diversity, equity, inclusion. And I can tell you that they have really put a lot of effort into this and to making sure that their families have a safe space, because that's one of the things that I'm working with them on, providing direct services. But also they were working in this space for about 3 years now. 3 years now, I know. So I just also wanted to share that with you as well.
Oh, they're amazing. Both of my kids are graduates of Great Oak High School, so I know. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Pastorian.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Commissioner Faulkner just said. I actually attended a webinar exactly on that subject, as how diversity, equity, inclusion, and race all play a part into education. And it is exactly what you're talking about in terms of, trainings and making sure that our teachers are aware, all staff, whether they're certificated or classified, are equally trained in being aware, and then obviously how to respond to those types of things as well. So there is definitely a movement there. And to Chairwoman Baker's point, absolutely, TVUSD has been working in this space for a little bit. I think we're going to see some more movement certainly here in the future, but I do know that certain schools are more active, Great Oak being one of them, in terms of moving forward in exactly what we're talking about. So it's really neat to see. There are several other events, I guess you could say, online events that are moving forward. I will forward to Director Joel to send out, one of which is kind of interesting because it's based on what I talked about earlier in terms of healing in as you start to make those changes in race, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So, and how that is a foundational piece to moving this particular initiative forward. So there's a couple of things coming up. Like I mentioned, there's a Power Up conference for leaders that are innovative leaders that are also working, whether you're in a company or individually, that is upcoming all towards the end of this month. So there's about 3 other events that I'll forward off to Director Joel to send to my fellow commissioners as well. So that's the extent to my report. But thank you. I agree 100% with what you were saying. Education certainly is where our youth is a big part of this, and we have to be inclusive of that component as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Did everyone go? Commissioner Harris, did you share? Do you want to share? You're muted.
Hi, I just I believe Commissioner Huerta brought up the anti-racist town hall that will be taking place. It's actually taking place on the 14th via Zoom. I have the link and I can share that. And I believe that it builds upon the conversation from last month about anti-racism with the author, I believe. I still need to watch it. I have the link to watch it. 2 hours. I got to sit down, but yes. That is all I have to report. I'm quick.
Commissioner Steve, did I miss you? I'm sorry.
It's okay. No worries. You know what? I'm continuing to educate myself and read the books that are necessary, and so I can speak within this space and be the commissioner that this city deserves. So I appreciate the opportunity for that. And also, as we come out of COVID and we get our shots, Director Joel, I know she's hurting today, but everybody stay safe and be smart and just, take care of each other. And I think that is the way we need to live our lives and be conscious of everything that's happening. and just stay safe more than anything so we can get back to normal sooner than later. So thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to note a couple things before I forget. Just a quick reminder that Kaiser Permanente is also hosting another Building a Social Care Community Network, Thrive Local Social Health Care Platform. They had this is a collaborative discussion with community groups, nonprofits, et cetera, local cities and agencies. And I sent the link to Director Joel. I can resend it if needed. But the next two sessions, and they're the same sessions, are on April 14th and 16th. And then I just wanted to ask if before we adjourn, I know we still need the executive director report, but before we adjourn, if we could do a moment of silence for the issues that have been taking place, but also I would ask if we could also adjourn in honor of Mr. John DeGangi, who was a longtime employee of Temecula, the city of Temecula. I also worked closely with him, and he was a friend. So I'm just putting out that request before we adjourn.
Say the name again.
John DeGangi. And if correct me, Director Joel, if I'm wrong, but he worked for the city of Temecula for 20 years, a very long time. Super nice man, and he recently passed away.
Okay. All right. Well, it's my turn. Okay, it's my turn. So I have a list here. The Equity Summit for CAP National is going to be very, very good. And I love that we're using the word equity. Out of all of the equity is the best one. So I appreciate us having that 7th. I just want to say that personally, that 7th, I think it completes us. And equity is the best word because it's just inclusive of all the words. So I appreciate that. And I'll be going to the National Equity Summit here, April 19th through the 21st, but it's open to the public to register as well at CAP National. Also here, I want to give a shout out and a thank you to our city council for the training that they allow to be public, because although we haven't been trained, we could still see the training, but to the point of what can we do for the community to have more trainings for us, for individuals on a platform to now is recorded, because I want to commend you because you're leading the way. I haven't seen any other cities putting up trainings for free that they're paying for on their platform and allowing their residents to be able to see that. I want to say thank you, City Council. That meant a lot to me. And I think that's a great way to go. And I think, and I do want to thank the League of Cities for coming in. I thought the training, so far what I saw, but what I want to really, I didn't see it all, but I really want to thank our city council members for showing up, for being present, for learning. It's one thing to create a REDI commission. It's another thing for you to show up yourself to the work. And I think we need to commend our city council members for showing up themselves. And so as a resident and as the chair of the REDI Commission, I appreciate it. I give you a shout out. And last but not least, okay, I want to thank, so on Monday night, almost all of my family was in a very bad accident here in Temecula. Off of Pachanga and Wolf Valley Road. And my daughter is pregnant and my 3 grandchildren were in the car and someone was inebriated and he ran the light and crashed into them. But I love living in Temecula because we care. Temecula PD, thank you. The firefighters, thank you. The first responders, thank you. Since I've been in this valley, I've given my life to serving the hurting and the disenfranchised. Personally, that's why I'm in this space. But I appreciate that when my family needed it, you all were there. Thank you to that lady that got out in the car with my daughter and prayed with her, because prayer matters. When kids are hysterically crying and they didn't know if their mom was going to die or their unborn sibling was going to die, a Temecula resident got into the car and prayed with them. So whoever you are, thank you. And I also want to just encourage us that Temecula does have heart because we show up for each other. And it's going to take a lot of heart to heal the racial inequities that we are facing. But it starts with compassion. Thank you, Temecula, for your compassion. My family has been through a horrific time this year on social and emotional things. We've struggled, and Temecula has come through for us. And I want to thank Temecula. I want to thank you. And I also want to simply thank you, City Council, first responders, for showing that you care. And I also want to give praise to the Lord. Every one of my family members are well. They are well. And I do thank the Lord Jesus for keeping them, because it could have been a very different situation. And I also pray for the young man that hit them, because his life will be changed from this, but I hope for the better. So that concludes my report. Thank you for being Temecula. We are Temecula strong, and we can do this work. That concludes my report. Thank you all. I'm going to call you Commissioner, Executive Director Joel.
Thank you, Chair Baker. And I am very glad that the Baker and Lewis family are healing and recovering. You guys are on my heart and in my thoughts. I'll just reference really quickly the League of California Cities Advancing Equity Committee. I co-chair that committee on behalf of the state at the League. And the reason that committee was put together is to help cities in this space. And not just help cities like Temecula that have the financial resources to contract for these services, but help cities like Delano or Dos Palos or Coachella or whoever it may be up and down. There's 482 cities. So that when there is a need in the REDI space, the League of California Cities can be someplace that they can go for resources and tools. Some of the recommendations of the committee, actually the committee met last week, I believe it is, all the days are kind of running together, were things like the development of equity and inclusion checklists for cities' policies and procedures and programs, so that when cities are delivering services to their community, when we're designing policies and programs, we can have these tools and say, okay, are we meeting these conditions at the very set? Those recommendations are going to the board at the next board meeting, and assuming they are adopted, they will be probably implemented and put out through the annual conference. So probably in the fall is when I'm guessing when we're going to actually start to see some of that come through. And then lastly, I just want to thank you all. Just for you guys all being present and bringing your authentic selves, your true selves, and willing to navigate this space with us. We're not, when I say we, I mean the collective we, the city, the council, staff, the commission. None of us have been here before. So we're all just trying to find our way through. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your grace. That's my report, Madam Chair.
Chair, if I may, I just want to thank you. I think on behalf of all of us, thank you too, Randy, for everything you do for us and all your help. You're so responsive. And thank you for coordinating the meeting with the council members as well. Thank you to Councilmember Swank and Councilmember Stewart for making time for us as well. So we really appreciate you. And I'm like you, I'm learning as I go as well. So I really appreciate your responsiveness and all your information and guidance.
Commissioner Wilson.
No, actually, I was getting ready to say good night.
Oh, you unmuted yourself. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
No.
thank you, Temecula, for having heart and showing up to this subject matter. And thank you for putting in the work to line up with your words to show you care, because Temecula does care. Have a good night. This meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting is May 13th, 2021. And we do close and take a moment of silence for those that are in pain, that are suffering. Our Asian community, Asian American communities, our Pacific Islander communities, those that are experiencing reinforced trauma from the midst of the George Floyd trial. Now, those that are hurting, that this may be triggering. And we do close in the name of Don and his service. We thank you, Temecula.
Yes. And your family, Mr. John DeGangi and your family as well, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And have a good night. Good night, Temecula.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
God bless you all.
Bye. Good night. Thank you.
Great meeting.
Yes.
Yes, yes, absolutely great meeting.